Welcome to the Albany Unified School District Board of Education emergency meeting on Thursday, October 8th, 2020. We're opening the meeting at 7:04 p.m. Ms. Shim, may we have a roll call, please?
Superintendent Wells.
Here.
President Trutain.
Here.
Vice President Duran.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Doss.
Here.
Trustee Hinckley.
Here.
Thank you. And student board members are both not joining us this evening.
Okay. I would like to ask for a board trustee to please read the mission and vision statement.
I'll help.
Thank you.
The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student. Anybody else for meeting norms?
Yeah, I can do that. Norms. Meeting norms. 1, maintain a focus on what is best for our students. 2, ensure a safe environment for all views to be expressed, treating each other, staff, and the public respectfully. Anyone want to read the others, or should I keep going?
Keep going.
3, endeavor to find common solutions to issues through collaboration without sacrificing one's beliefs in what is best for students. 4, make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind while others are allowed to express their points of view.
Thank you so much. This is an emergency session, as I announced before, and the goal of this is twofold, I think. 1, because we have now brought the superintendent's plan for a pivot to hybrid learning back as an review and action item. So that means that before the end of this meeting, I will be open for a motion to approve the superintendent's plan, which somebody might provide or they may not. But we do have the option of taking a vote on the plan or some amended form of the plan that might come forward from a trustee at this meeting tonight. I will also say that the district is not presenting exactly the same plan here tonight at the emergency meeting that they did on Tuesday. They have reworked the distance learning aspect of this plan, because when the district does pivot to a hybrid learning plan, the district is also providing an option for students to remain in distance learning. So that option will be open to parents, and what was originally proposed was a fully distance learning curriculum, but it didn't involve an AUSD teacher in a strong forward role. And the district heard on Tuesday night that that many people just didn't feel like that was really an AUSD education. And so the superintendent said at our Tuesday meeting, he said, okay, I'm going to take that off the table. We're going to make sure that our 100% distance learning option is going to be an AUSD education with an AUSD teacher. So that is part of the new plan that we're going to hear about tonight. And I'm calling it a plan, but really it's a proposal. So we can vote on the proposal tonight if a board member cares to make that motion. But then I do want to also say that there could be further changes in the plan if it came back to the board again. So this is a very fluid situation, being in this pandemic, and although we do want to commit to a direction in order to help the district move forward, we also must maintain the ability to change when situations change. Now, I also do want to point out that the superintendent also conducted a parent forum just a little bit earlier this evening. So as well as the parent feedback that we got, and community feedback, feedback from parents and teachers at our last meeting, there was another opportunity earlier this evening. And so there has been more opinion expressed and thoughts that will weigh in on this topic. So with that, I want to go ahead and ask if there's a trustee that's ready to make a motion to approve the agenda for this emergency meeting.
Yeah, can I just add one thing real quick, President Tutang?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the public know that all of the board members were at Dr. Wells's forum earlier too as well.
Yes, indeed. Actually, I was only able to attend the first half hour of the hour-long forum because I had to leave the parent forum and go to a meeting with trustees throughout Alameda County District that was being run with new information about hybrid learning plans. And so I think I'm the only trustee that only got to hear half of it. But all of us heard the first half hour of those parent comments, and I heard a lot of interesting comments. I appreciated that very much. And I believe that the other 4 trustees attended the entire thing and did hear all of that. And we're certainly taking all of your thoughts into consideration.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
May we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Doss,
Yes.
Trustee Clark,
Yes?
Vice President Duran,
Yes.
President Trutain,
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley.
Yes.
So the agenda passes unanimously, and I will now cede the floor to Superintendent Wells so that he can take over this presentation.
Thank you, President Tutang. You saved me a lot of introduction because you laid out rehashing in a form of summary quite well, very clear and precise. So much appreciated on that. I want to really highlight a major piece and process issue as it relates to the proposal that you would hear tonight. I want everyone to keep in mind that this is a plan, but this is a plan that is it's going to be fluid and flexible based on our kids' needs or needs that arise. So that, for example, we're not stuck in any one area. The plan can always come back for adjustments. And based on so many unknowing issues, part of which make this very frustrating because we just don't know so much around the pandemic, around whether or not we have to pivot after we open and close. Some details will be added throughout. And this plan would be one that's evolving and one that would be posted on our website as a draft as we could get more and more input and work out more and more details. And as we detail this thing till it can't be in detail anymore. So what you're gonna get is a general plan and concept and proposal tonight. One that can be read on our website, I think by tomorrow evening. And so it's important that I point that out. And so tonight we have our Assistant Superintendent presenting. the plan, kind of like the clip notes from last week, and then the adjustments we made and our next steps. So with no further ado, I turn over to you, our very own Assistant Superintendent Williams.
Good evening. Thank you, Superintendent Wells. Good evening, Board President Trutain, board members, and community. Dr. Wells, it wasn't last week, it was 2 days ago that I'm going to give the cliff notes from. It maybe seems like a week ago, but here we are. So, Julie, I think you have just a presentation. If you could share screen, or that'd be helpful. Do you have that to share?
Oh, give me just one moment and I'll pull that up. Thank you.
Yeah. So while Ms. Shen is pulling that up, I'll just say, as Dr. Wells said, we did get quite a bit of good feedback at Tuesday's meeting, and then again in the last hour that we spent listening to the various viewpoints and questions of parents, which I know we really appreciate as we try to refine this planning process moving forward. And so I'm just going to share with you for about maybe 5 or 7 minutes so that the balance of time can be given to the board and community for discussion. What I'd like to share with you this evening are just a couple of clarifications that have come up as questions since the Tuesday meeting. So I won't be revisiting the entire plan. I'll just be sharing a couple of slides. I did prepare a few more slides than I'll be speaking to, but those could just sort of serve as reference. So Julie, if you could go to the first slide, please. So on the first slide is just a reminder of the information that we received from Alameda County Department of Public Health on October the 1st about the possibility of K-6 elementary schools reopening as soon as October 13th if they were ready to do so. You can go to the next slide, Julie. The next slide just reminds us of the steps that we would need to take in order to be ready to reopen. So working with our labor partners, procuring a contract for surveillance testing, assigning a COVID liaison, who in fact we have 2. They are Executive Director Alexia Ritchie and also our district nurse Monica Meng, and then posting a document that outlines plans that include all of these different areas. And so this is the plan that was included in the board packet on Tuesday, and that sort of drove the presentation that you saw on Tuesday. So you can go to the next slide. So I did just want to spend a moment talking about sort of reopening readiness. So on Tuesday, the 6th, actually, we received the actual checklist from Alameda County Office of Education. And so if you go to the next slide, I have linked the actual checklist. This presentation will be posted after the meeting. I've linked the actual checklist from ACOE, but it's also downloadable from their website. And so these are the areas that we are called to address in the checklist. So I won't read all of these off to you. Cleaning protocols, disinfection, ventilation, items such as physical distancing, face coverings, and other essential protective gear. And we have, I think, in our previous updates, brought some of that information to you both, sort of generally and specific in regards to our status there. But if you go to the next slide, Dr. Wells, I believe in this meeting, but certainly in our last forum, spoke about the district preparing to launch a dashboard or checklist of our own that would show the community, the public, our staff, our board, where we are in terms of our readiness to have these items completed. So what you will see beginning on, I believe, the 16th of October is a checklist, something like this, which would identify all of the items from Alameda County Office of Education's checklist with some identification of where we are as a district in the process. So this is just a template for you so that you don't see any percentages here, because we're just sort of showing you what this will look like when it begins to be shared. So you can go to the next slide. And this just shows some of the other items that the county office is asking us to account for in terms of demonstrating our readiness to open. So items such as staff training and family education, testing of staff, which we know was a big topic of conversation at our last meeting, triggers for switching to distance learning, and communication plans. So you can go to the next slide, Julie. And again, this next slide then just would sort of provide a template for how it is that we would intend to share this information. Again, beginning on the 16th of October, which I believe is next Friday, we will start to report regularly on how we are moving forward in these areas. We can go to the next slide, I believe. Okay, so there was a lot of conversation about the instructional options, and in particular, sort of the what would be offered in a remote option versus a hybrid option. So if you go to the next slide, I'm not gonna read all of these again, but I just want to remind us again that on the 14th of July, when the board approved the reopening plan, included in that plan for a hybrid reopening was students attending school in stable cohorts on either a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday, students receiving remote instruction on a Wednesday to allow for deep cleaning between cohorts, and then also remote learning days, including synchronous and asynchronous instruction with AUSD staff. And as I said on Tuesday, this notion of sort of using our staff on our remote days really came out of sort of seeing how beneficial and positive it has been for students, for example, to receive their PE or their science or their art or their music as part of their instructional program. So we would want to continue to leverage those great resources and provide students that access to a well-rounded education on their remote, not in-person days. There was a question, we can go to the next slide. There was a question at the last meeting, or a couple comments about sort of this idea of simulcast or live streaming. And then there was a specific question from a board member sort of asking us to address this. So I just wanted to touch on this just for a moment here. And I just wanted to say that, as I said on Tuesday, teaching in person is very different than teaching online. And so the idea of live streaming would essentially be asking a teacher to do both types of teaching at the same time, right? There are some considerations, I think, to sort of name here as we are thinking about the feasibility of live streaming classroom instruction for students who are participating remotely. One of those, I think, sort of is just pedagogically sort of the feasibility of sort of being in a classroom, engaging with students, you know, talking with them, working with them in small groups, being able to sort of engage with them, and then also sort of being present and able to sort of engage an audience that's not in the classroom, right? And so I see that maybe sort of a challenge there is trying to sort of balance equal engagement of both groups at the same time. So I do think that that is a consideration to sort of name. A second, as we were talking today, that came up was around privacy, right? So live streaming, I think, is sort of, you know, it sort of works in this kind of format when you're speaking out to an audience, but are not sort of necessarily getting a lot of interaction back and forth. And so I think, you know, as we think about maybe some of the implications of, you know, how much can a teacher sort of be working with a student one-on-one if they're sort of mic'd up and live and, you know, sort of are having to work with two groups at the same time. I think that's a consideration. And then third, one of our teachers, Jeff Castle, mentioned this just right at the end of our meeting on Tuesday, which is just the feasibility of sort of procuring and securing all of the technology to be able to sort of pull that off. So I think at this time, we're not thinking that this hybrid model would include live streaming for these reasons. But I did just sort of want to put that out there because I know that a few folks were talking about sort of that might be a solution to engaging students who are at home. And I just want to say again, I think our teachers have done a really fabulous job sort of providing the remote instruction, and in-person instruction is not the same as remote instruction. And I think it would be nigh impossible to sort of try to provide those at the same time. The other considerations for thinking about a hybrid model again are, you know, sort of leveraging our different staff, thinking about how we might use our specialists during students not in-person instructional days, so that students have 5 days of active engagement with AUSD staff. There also were a couple questions about schedules, and so I don't have a schedule for you here, but I do want to sort of just identify some of the considerations as we're thinking about building a schedule for students and staff. And one of those would be, of course, adhering to the Senate Bill 98 daily instructional minutes, which varies from TK1 through 4th and 5th grade from 180 to 240 minutes daily. So that would be a block of time we would preserve in that hybrid model. We also have to think about, for our teachers, providing a daily prep and then also providing a lunch period, right? So if you think about sort of a maximum maybe of, if you are looking at this 240 minutes, that's 4 hours, plus 45 minutes and another 45 minutes, that's another hour and a half. You can start to sort of think about what that day would look like, how long that day would be. But we don't have a schedule for you today, but I did think it was helpful for you at least to sort of see the different components that would make up a day in terms of what we would have to consider. And then the last consideration, and this appears in both models, is the idea of class rebalancing. So when we get to the point of determining which students and staff will remain on campus and which students and staff will move forward in a remote learning scenario, there might come a time where we need to think about the necessity of rebalancing in order to ensure that students who need a remote learning teacher can access one, and students who are remaining in the hybrid also can be grouped together for their instruction. So those are just some considerations that we wanted to name because I think they sort of came up quite a little bit on Tuesday. So I'll go quickly to the next slide. I don't want to take a lot of time. So this is just information about the remote learning model. So we heard from both Board President Trutain and then also Dr. Wells that we are going back to take another look at how we provide this remote model. We've done some thinking between Tuesday and today, but I don't have too many more details given that it's just been about 48 hours. I did want to, at the request of a board meeting, just provide this education code around students who are eligible for remote instruction. So per Ed Code 43503, I believe this is the education code that Vice President Duran cited on Tuesday. Students who are medically fragile or would be put at risk by in-person instruction or who are self-quarantining because of exposure to COVID-19 may receive 100% remote learning. So that's the language in the education code. Additionally, if you look at the next bullet, in addition, and so this is AUSD's commitment, any family may choose to continue to receive 100% remote learning. So we want to be really clear about our commitment to that. And also that students in remote learning will receive instruction from AUSD staff. Remote learning will include synchronous and asynchronous instruction and will be standards-based, and the curriculum will be state approved. So if we can go to the next slide really quickly. So this next slide then just talks about some of the considerations as we think about how we might launch a remote program. And so chief among those considerations would be ensuring that we had adequate staff to provide that remote instruction, in addition to adequate staff to also provide in-person instruction, right? And then other comments that we heard that are coming forward as considerations are thinking about ways to keep the classroom teacher and peers connected to the student, depending on sort of how that gets arranged. And then also opportunities for students who are participating in remote learning to also engage in on-campus activities. And then again, this notion of rebalancing, sort of if we are able to determine, once we are able to determine the percentage of students who would participate in a continue in remote learning versus the percentage of students who would return to a hybrid model, what then would that mean for sort of needing to rebalance students and teachers? So that's our update from Tuesday on our instructional model options. And then we can go to next steps. Again, this is just a brief sort of cliff notes. I think Dr. Wells called these cliff notes, right? So in terms of next steps, there was a lot of conversation at the last meeting also about hubs. Dr. Wells spoke about hubs for special education, for English learners, for intervention, for mental health, PE, dance. He said yogurt, but he meant yoga. And so just thinking about the different ways to engage students on campus. We talked about, as a next step, implementing surveys. And actually, I think I would flip the order of these. I think probably we want to survey our staff first, and then survey our parents, only because I think we need to have a sense first of sort of the staffing that's available to implement any model that we would be thinking about moving forward. And then there was a request to confirm the next date of our collaboration with our labor partners, and that is on Monday, October the 12th. The next slide just is a reminder of the dates that Superintendent Wells identified for pivoting back to hybrid instruction, just for your reference. And then finally, our new byline, AUSD, is turning the lights back on. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, maybe that's it. There we go, that's it. So that's our last slide. And so now I would turn it back to Superintendent Wells, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Marie Williams. At this time, I'll turn it back over to our School Board President, Kim Trutane.
All right, I see Trustee Clark's hand is up. Trustee Clark, would you like to make the first comment?
That was actually from before. Thank you, President.
Okay, then any other trustees? Now is the time. And I believe at our last meeting, trustees were very aware of maybe asking 1 or 2 questions and then letting it roll to the next trustee so that we can get around and make sure that everybody has a chance to be heard. I believe that Trustee Hinckley's hand was up first and then Trustee Doss.
How about me?
Oh, did I miss?
Sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a process question really quick before Trustee Hinckley begins, which is, you stated how we did follow last week in terms of a couple of questions that we asked and to provide time for everybody. However, there are several questions that I never were able to raise simply because our time ran out. So I'm wondering, what is the best process? If you can be sure, President Trutane, that we go around at least twice in terms of commenting or asking questions.
Yeah, I'd say just try to be real direct and just ask the question rather than a lot of, preface or material at the end. So
comments as opposed to a question.
Right. So you can make it clear about whether this is a comment or a question and just fire them right off, and we'll see if staff can answer those, and then we'll move on to the next trustee.
Is that me?
Right.
So I'm going to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to save my comment piece for later. I have a couple of questions about the hubs. So one is, so I, like probably some other people, watched Berkeley's board meeting last night, and they spent some time talking about what they're calling cohorts, which we're calling hubs. And actually, that was the only piece they voted to move forward right now. They did not make a vote about the other reopening, but the cohort piece led me to want to ask some questions about the scope of our thinking about hubs. We've kind of mentioned, SPED, ELD. I'd like to understand, it sounded like in Berkeley, they're looking more deeply at perhaps kids who haven't engaged at all, who haven't been able to log on. So I think I'd like to know more about our model for choosing who gets to participate in those hubs and identifying the degree to which we can use those to address some learning loss issues before we move to a fuller reopening. So how are we identifying students? Have there already been conversations with staff to identify staff who would be willing to participate in those? What would they look like? Would there be curriculum or other services, or is it just sort of facilitating the remote education aspect? So basically, I'd like to know some more specifics about how those would be structured, the scope of them, how many kids we anticipate serving, Yeah, I think that's it.
Trustee Hinckley, thank you. And you referenced Berkeley early on. So my staff and I spent yesterday watching the board meeting from start to finish. One of the things in terms of Berkeley with their hubs, they're having 8 kids for 4 of the 11 elementary campuses, and none of which are going to be participating in hubs by teachers, and they're looking for volunteers to come forward. And so they're, and the superintendent mentioned at 1 hour and 42 minutes, I think, that they had no plan for elementary. So they were still working on details and specificity. So we were hoping they would be a model for us to pick up some pearls and nuggets, but we did get a lot of insight. But as it relates to our hubs and what we want to work on, the how is what we're going to be starting to address with our bargaining unit members next week, and working on some very specific details about whether or not it's going to be based on volunteering, how we're going to identify the kids, how we're going to get them on campus, how we're going to start engaging in mental health with the connectedness around other kind of activities we can participate in, whether it be hiking and things of that sort while we're remote. And so we're beginning to grapple with the how, but we want to do it with our bargaining unit members, and we're excited about meeting with them next week.
And what about what types of students we can serve? Is it sort of up to us in the sense that even before we get an instructional reopening approval, because hubs are already authorized, is there a set population for which we're allowed to offer those services? Is that up to us? Do we have a strategy for identifying the kids that we would want to offer that to first and how we'd prioritize them?
Yeah, it's up to us as we look at an equity lens. I think as Trustee Doss has been really pushing to get the hubs on campus yesterday. And so we're going to do this. The sites already have a process for identifying their most needy kids. And I imagine we're going to do an abbreviated version or stay with that process. But we didn't want to come with any mandates. We wanted to work together with our bargaining units and determine how we do that. And when we do that, something really, really good comes out of it. And it's a good vetting process. So we're still grappling with the details of the how, but we plan on updating the board on a regular basis at every board meeting about these pieces. But we're excited about the possibilities and trying to address the mental health through activities while we're remote, as was described by Assistant Superintendent Williams just earlier.
I would just like to add that what I heard at the last meeting on Tuesday was that the small group provision of the law allows districts to identify which students they want to bring back, and that Albany Unified had identified English learners, students receiving special education, students receiving intervention services, and students needing a small group for mental health considerations.
Correct.
So I think that those are the 4 categories that that are at the top of our list. Okay. I think we should move on to Trustee Doss for his.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. My comment is, we've heard a lot of people speak, and I really appreciate what everybody's saying, and I respect what everybody's saying, whether I agree or disagree. I take that out of the equation when I'm listening. I heard from a couple of parents who didn't feel comfortable getting online. One parent actually didn't have the ability to get online during the meetings because she is a nurse. And so while we're all asleep, she's working to save lives. And she did message me at 4 o'clock in the morning when she had a break. And I'm not going to use her name to respect her privacy, but she messaged me while she was on her break at 4 in the morning. And she said, I hope this doesn't wake you up, but I just want to let you know that I work in the middle of the night while my kids are at home asleep. So then what do you think I do when I get home from work? Well, I go to sleep. Well, while she sleeps, distance learning is happening. and kids are trying to get on Zoom and trying to stay on Zoom and getting their different supplies together and things like that. But this lady is asleep. And who would blame her? Because in the middle of the night, she's awake saving lives. I don't want her to not get sleep during the day. I want her to be wide awake so that she could do the important work. But don't we owe it to her to provide an education and a safe place for a student to be? And so that's my comment there. So that was a message that I got. My second comment related to that, I got another message from a parent that was very short. And she said, I don't think any parents are logging on to the board meeting and they're going to say, hey, I haven't had a decent meal since school closed, or my kids aren't eating right now, or my kid tried to commit suicide. I don't think people are going to log on to the board meeting and share all that business, especially since when you log on to the board meeting, most of the time you're logged in under your student's name. So then that would violate their privacy. I just think we need to keep in mind that there are parents out there that aren't going to log into the board meeting and tell the entire community, the 350 people on the board meeting, all of their business. But that doesn't mean that their concerns aren't real. So that's why I'm pushing for us to set a date and get this done quickly. It's not just because I want to do it. It's because it's necessary, and there are people out there in need. More people in need than we know. They just can't log on to this meeting, or they won't put their kid out there like that, which for the parents here tonight, I hope we can all understand that we wouldn't want to do that either. My question is, can we go back? Julie, can you pull back up the checklist? And if the staff is able to do so, can you tell us the things that you've already completed on that checklist and what needs to be completed? If you have an idea of that. If not, I understand, because I know that I just kind of brought this question up, but some of the things on that checklist look like things we've already discussed and worked on. So I'm hoping that you could give us an idea of what we have done and what we need to complete. Thank you.
Hey, Trustee Doss, thank you for that question. And you're absolutely right. Some of the things we completed 100%, but we're more comfortable giving you a very specific list targeted for next Friday. In the interim, I could probably give you an update at least by over the weekend, but there's some on this list where we have 100%. And I didn't memorize all of them. And then there's some that we got a lot of work to do on. And that's why we want to have a transparency and a weekly update to the board and the community where we are with the list.
Follow up on that. For the update, is that going to be sent to the community or just an email to myself and the other board members?
It's going to be posted on our website, updated every Friday, and also sent out to the board members as well.
Thank you.
Vice President Duran?
Okay, our role as a board is to set direction. So I'm going to push things a little bit. But first, I would like to take a pause to recognize that the school district and our district office and the tech folks have had so much work to do through all this time, through the whole pandemic since March. And I feel kind of bad when we compare ourselves to other school districts and what they're doing, simply because there's less than 10 in our district, and everybody needs to recognize that. Our community needs to recognize how few people we have, say, compared to Berkeley. And so I just wanted to just acknowledge the district office folks and the tech folks that are working so hard, and that, you know, and that sometimes we forget how few there are. Now, having said that, I'm going to start pushing, okay, which is that I was aghast at the calendar last week in terms of in-person instruction. I really feel that we need to, as a board, we need to give the district a clear direction about getting our kids back in school. And it's interesting because the parents that have written letters, that talked at the last meeting, that talked tonight, many of them are comfortable in keeping their kids home, especially after hearing that the hybrid model is now going to include our teachers, that it's not going to be outsourced to a third-party company. So I think there's many of our parents that would be willing to do that, which is great because then it drops off the number of kids that would be in person. And that might be attractive for teachers that would consider coming back, but it also depends on how they feel about how many kids they're going to be facing. So I think those things go hand in hand. We need to find out the numbers. And like I said, parents said that they would be willing to have their kids stay home, that they were feeling comfortable. That's not to say that we make the final decision about who comes to school. The parents do. But nevertheless, if that consideration about who our most vulnerable kids are, as has already been mentioned tonight, that would be key in terms of maybe fewer students. So based on that, I'm thinking that if we can work hard again and really work on the logistics, so that something like if we could get our preschool through, say, second graders back by November 2nd, and then during that week, see what are the holes we have in terms of things we need to do. And then a week later on November 9th, get our third through fifth graders back into school. And I think we also, because the county gave us that direction, that we should consider the sixth graders. And I'm sure the principal of the middle school would have a lot to say about that. And certainly in terms of how logistically feasible is it for once kids get into the middle school. It's a whole different ballgame potentially than the elementary schools. But I would like the board to really discuss some hard dates, because we've heard from many parents that are really concerned about how far back we have pushed the date. And then also that maybe not tonight, but soon, that the board would set a date for when we would discuss a middle school through high school proposal. Once again, we've heard from the student board members, the student trustees, that the kids at the high school, many of them are concerned. And so maybe second semester is a more appropriate date to look at secondary, and also in terms of, COVID advances, in terms of vaccinations might be better at that time. But I really think so that we don't fall into the same problem that we've had now, which is not being fully prepared to start school when the county gave us permission. So I'm hoping that, sometime sooner than later, we'd be able to start looking at a secondary proposal. And then the second thing I'll just say at this time is, I've been really happy to hear from teachers that have spoken, that said they all want to go back to school, and that, but they have the concerns about the health and safety reopening plans. And now that the county has given us those, and as Trustee Dawes said, we've already completed many of them, hopefully. And so that'll help us get back on a better footing. And I have a couple of more, but I'll wait till the second round of discussion.
Thank you. Trustee Clark, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple quick questions and an observation. The first one would be to Dr. Wells. By looking at the presentation that was sent to us earlier this afternoon, and the same one that was presented tonight, the only difference that I saw was that the 100% remote was going to be by Albany teachers. Is that correct, or did I miss anything? Because that's the only difference I really saw.
I think we had the checklist, and we spoke about the conversion of the checklist into a dashboard that we would provide updates to the community and the board in terms of our readiness, because that's a critical piece that we are required to consider before opening schools.
Right, but your plan, the only change was that Albany teachers will be teaching the students during 100% remote, right?
I think you're right, yes.
Thank you. And the second one would be, I was looking over my emails earlier today, and in a Friday update a while back, you had said that the county had provided us at no cost with X amount of PPE. So do we still have that, or did we get additional stuff?
Yes, we have that. We have 3 months worth it, and so that's ready to go. That would be 100% checked off. Trustee Doss asked earlier, for example, are there some things on this list that we already completed? And that's one of the things that we completed at 100%.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. And the last one will be an observation. I know sometimes board members get emails that are sent to all of us, and sometimes we get ones that are sent individually to us. And I wasn't doing like a tally sheet or whatever, but a lot of this discussion is about elementary students. And at least for the ones I received, there might have been a couple, but the vast majority, might have been a couple the other way, but the vast majority was saying that this March 15th date for the secondary students is just completely unacceptable. And I brought that up at the board meeting the other night. The county says 4 to 12 weeks, which is 1 to 3 months, and we're saying 5 months. So just wanted to share that observation from the emails that I received.
Thank you, Trustee Clark. Let me see, I guess it's my turn. I don't really have any questions. I did want to relate from my previous Zoom call right before this meeting with Alameda County officials that those officials mentioned that the only school district in Alameda County that has achieved a memorandum of understanding regarding hybrid learning with their bargaining units is Emory, and every other district is still in process on that. So there's all kinds of information out there. You get these, see a news headline or something, and I just wanted to share that information from our county officials because I feel like that's very reliable. And I also did want to bring forward that that Marin County, well, actually the elementary district, I think it's called Miller Creek Elementary District in Marin County. They just opened their hybrid on Monday of this week. And there's a beautiful article with lovely pictures of the kids returning to school on Monday in that. They announced way back in September that they were planning on reopening, but the reopening took some time to accomplish and resulted just in the actual hybrid opening today. So it took even Marin, that has a tremendous amount of resource, weeks to go from the point of making their announcement and getting their permission to actually opening their classroom doors. So just a couple of comments. And then I think that I just want to give Superintendent Wells a chance to make any comments before we start another round that would then begin again with Trustee Hinckley.
Not at this time, thank you.
Then Trustee Hinckley, would you like to?
Sure. So these are, I think, mostly comments. So I just wanted to sort of frame how I've been thinking and what I found helpful about some of the discussions that have happened. So I really appreciate the more, I'm going to lower my hand, the more robust remote model, not just because I think it's really important that we offer it, which obviously it is, but because I think that it makes sense to approach this the way that many other districts have, which is to believe that the more families choose remote learning, the safer the in-person environment will be. And that rather than create disincentives for people to remain remote, that instead we maintain that as a quality option for people so that the folks who really need it, the people that Trustee Doss is talking about, are able to be in a physical environment that is less crowded. And I think that that is, from my observations of other boards, that's exactly how they've envisioned this, that to the degree that remote learning is feasible for children and families, that it is the safest option and that it is ideal in order to make more literal space for the kids that really need to be in person. So that is how I'm thinking about the importance of making sure that both options are of equal quality. I think that that necessitates that we have a much better understanding of what percentage of our population is likely to choose each option. And I understand that it's challenging to survey people when you don't yet have an accurate description of the two options. But I think we have to move forward quickly with that kind of survey. And that is something that other districts have moved forward with as they've developed these two models, so that they can have a sense as they talk in the same way that they talk with their staff. If 40% of our families will choose to remain remote, then the logistics of the hybrid program look quite different. And I also just want to say that I think we all know, and it came up on whatever day that was, that whatever pivoting we do is going to create some disruption in terms of how children are connected to specific teachers and to specific classrooms. I don't think there's any way to avoid that. But I think that's something I'd like to hear more about as we get a better sense of our families' choices and our staff's choices, and how we're thinking about creating this new sort of bifurcated experience. The second thing I wanted to say is that I share the sense of urgency around giving the families who desperately need an in-person option, to get them an in-person option. It's one of the reasons that I think all of us have been really emphasizing the hubs, which, by the way, don't just have to be at the elementary level, but can be at all of our sites, and can move, pending negotiations with staff, can be more flexible. So I share the urgency to get kids in person. I have to say that this plan so far doesn't have the level of detail that I would need to feel comfortable sending my kid there or going to work there. And that is totally understandable given that we've just gotten this checklist. But as a board member, I really want to see really concrete sense of progress on this. And the one additional point I'll make out of that is that we developed a lot of these plans when we thought we were all leaving our packages outside for 3 days because we thought that was the biggest risk, right? Much of what we know about the virus has changed. We know that being inside, regardless of plexiglass barriers or masks or what have you, is the riskiest thing that we can do. And so I would like to see a plan that really explicitly grapples with what we know about the transmission of the virus indoors, through the air, over a long period of time. And I'm not seeing that in this plan. And I appreciate that one of the roles our teachers will play in bargaining is to negotiate those kinds of safety standards. And I just wanted to comment that right now this plan doesn't give me that sense of comfort that I hope would be achieved over the next, whatever the time period is between the target date we set and today, because this is not concrete enough to protect yet our kids and staff. And I think I just want to make that very clear. Yeah, I think those are the comments I want to make before we move to the public.
Okay, so now let's check back in with Trustee Doss.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few things. I had questions about the reopening of ACC, and so I'll start there. The dates that we have, Julie, are you able to bring back up the dates for the reopening of the ACC? The reason why I think that these dates are important is because, as we all know, Halloween is coming up very soon. And if we were to have an option for, I'll wait until it gets pulled up here. Okay. Thank you very much. I know we're making you work overtime, Ms. Shen, so I appreciate it. The dates there, preschool, school age hubs, November 5th. I would like to propose that we push that date up to have it in place prior to Halloween so that the kids can you know, so that the kids and the staff can put something together for the little ones, because I don't think trick-or-treating is going to be a safe option this year. And that makes me sad that the kids aren't going to be able to do their parade at school that they usually do. I get really excited about that and seeing the kids do that. And so I proposed that we move that date up to have it take place, you know, before Halloween, so that we can, so the little ones can take, you know, participate in something of that. But then also having the date pushed forward, just because, again, the sooner we make that happen, the sooner we can alleviate some of the pain that families are having. And I've heard everything that parents are saying. So if you need to keep your little one at home, then you should 100% do that. We don't want to put anybody in danger or anything like that. If you feel comfortable and are ready to send your student back to school, or if you don't have any other option, then this is your only option, then I'd like to provide that option for students. The second part I'd like to discuss, which is what I've been saying for the past couple of meetings and haven't really got feedback on it, is I'd like the board to discuss and get more concrete dates around the hubs and more details on what the hub actually consists of. Is it just a hub of students that are in a safe space 6 feet apart, but there's childcare provided for those students while they complete their distance learning? Or is it a hub where these students are in a place with a teacher and the teacher is going over specific lessons? Because I think that will also help us determine like how that's going to look. If we're just providing a place, it's a hub, and we're providing a place for students to be able to complete their distance learning because their parents don't have anywhere else for them to go, then I don't know if that has to wait for negotiations, because it doesn't have to be a teacher there. It just needs to be like a professional there, staff member or whatnot. But the details of that, I'll let you guys you know, go over and kind of fill me in on. But, or is it the hub? Is it an actual like teacher teaching specific class, math, science, history? So that's my question about that. Thank you.
For the intervention hubs and ELD, for example, intervention could be math or ELA teaching. It's for our kids who are in most need of academic support. And so for the intervention, it would be academic. But I do have, for President Tutain, and Trustee Dawes probably can help me out here, I'm listening very intently, and I was wondering, these are the superintendent proposed dates, and they're based on a whole number of factors. For example, our readiness to open. And so, for example, if November 5th is our target date, it's based on our readiness to open. If it's moved up, for example, if what I hear from Trustee Dawes, for example, his proposal, I think a proposal in this arena comes in the form of a motion. And if the motion is to set the superintendent dates aside and come up with your own dates without the detailed input of rationale why these dates, I think it sets us up for major disappointment. And I just want to, in the spirit of full disclosure, it is really, really difficult in the pandemic to not have Halloween. I love when the kids come by my house on Halloween, and just the thought of missing that tradition is one of those multiple painful events that we have to forego in the spirit of health and safety. But getting back to the point of order and clarification, I wanted to know, President Tutain and Trustee Dawes probably can help me out here. Was the November date moved up to October something? Is that a motion, or is that just Trustee Dawes wondering if we can do
I haven't heard any motions yet. I think we're still in our second round of board comments. And then I would expect that we would go to public comment.
I can answer that really easily. It was not a motion. I plan on making my motions after public comment.
No, thank you.
Also, I would take more from my comment based on doing what's best for the families in need and less from the Halloween comment. But I understand what you're trying to say. But I would never want to put people in danger just to celebrate a holiday. We've all sacrificed a lot. I just was trying to kind of mention on a lighter note and not, I feel like I've been kind of pounding the point of the people in need and all the tragic things that are happening and that are going to continue to happen while we take longer to open. And so I was just trying to
My apologies, trustee.
No worries.
My apologies, trustee. I think I'm too intense. I think I'm too intent on listening with great detail. And I think I'm kind of tense because this is a really big issue. And so I just, it's important for all of us to remind each other for us to take a deep breath because this is a very serious matter. So that was me. And thank you for the lightheartedness because I think that's what I need right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice President Duran.
Okay, earlier when I spoke, I had proposed a date for the preschool through secondary starting in November 2nd. So I just mentioned it, but I certainly wanted to propose it after we hear from the parents. Just to make that clear, Superintendent. And so there's other areas though that I had wanted to mention at this time. I had mentioned this last time, or I had asked a question about that, and I felt my question wasn't responded to very well, or maybe it wasn't the answer I wanted, which was I felt that the district needs to be able to say, yes, we have 100% verified that all our students, all of them, 100% have the Chromebook and have remote access, or that the tech folks are working on that remote access, because I know there's problems every day in certain areas. But I think we have to have a plan about reaching out to those kids that needed the Chromebooks and having it very clear that, yeah, we have checked off this kid and that family. So that's something I would really like to see, whether it's counselors reaching out, whether the teachers know who their kids are and want follow-up done by people outside the classroom. I think it's really key in terms of our kids having access. Another area is, I just want to mention once again, the mental health focus. And I know Assistant Superintendent Williams has mentioned it over and over again. And I really do appreciate that. And I just feel it can't be emphasized enough about all the things that can be done for the students, be they in the hybrid, in person, or be they the remote learning. And for example, I just saw, I think today from middle school, the clubs that they offer to the kids on Fridays. And I know the assistant superintendent had mentioned clubs, sports, different things that, activities that the kids can engage in. So I'm just gonna keep reminding us, keeping us going back there, because what I'd really like to hear is a super in-depth report about the mental health focus and, samples from teachers of what they're doing, that kind of stuff. So I, as a board member, am better informed. The other area that I wanted to go, and these were more questions to Mr. Borrego, and I know I'm always going and asking him questions. And if we would look at, say, early November for the kids to go back, I wanted to ask you about the health and safety reopening plan, because that is, once again, what the teachers would care about. And so I just have a list, and if you could just respond afterwards to these. One that came up more recently was, I know a parent and it's a concern that we would all have about password security for all the students in the district, and somebody outside being able to have access to kids have access to the kids, because passwords in the district are pretty easy to figure out. And so whether they're, and maybe you're not the person to answer that one, but that's certainly an issue that I think we have to address, just simply about the password for student security. The parent had mentioned something else about advertisement, but as I think Mr. Cassell responded at one point, is that we have issues and we have issues, and we'll take the battles as we go, and maybe the other one is not so important. Another is, I saw in the report on Tuesday, there was something about a self-check protocol prior to entering the campus for students. And I don't get that. I mean, I thought it was something that we had to be really vigilant about in terms of the kids entering campus. And I just feel that needs to be spelled out more. And if staff is going to do that, you know, everything from the temperature, the touchless temperature check, to somebody standing there and handing out masks if students need masks, that kind of thing. The ventilation, of course, is a key one. And I know, Mr. Borrego, you've talked about it before, and it comes up over and over again still about the fans and the purifier units for Cornell. If that's going to meet the standard of the county in terms of that air quality that we're expecting. And I know a teacher has mentioned it in a similar vein for many of the classrooms at Marin. And are we addressing the issues at Marin too? Another one is, and I know Trustee Hinckley sort of referred to it, and it didn't sound in a positive way, but in terms of plexiglass barriers, I mean, that has been something that has been used, and I'm wondering if that has been talked about in the district. And another one that I saw on, I think it was Berkeley, was the touchless faucets, if we're in any way trying to have those on our school sites. And the last one, which Trustee Hinckley also mentioned, was outdoor classes. We mentioned, I mean, it's been mentioned long time ago, maybe in May, April, or that time when they initially started talking about the road to coming back, and many parents were very jazzed about outdoor learning, and I don't know if we are trying to address that in any way. I mean, the weather's going to get colder before it gets warmer, I think, but I'm just wondering if you've considered that at all. That's it.
I don't know, because Director Borrego did not get these questions ahead of time. I mean, it's been 48 hours since our previous meeting, and so I'm not being at all critical, but we didn't have the normal amount of time for submitting questions and getting answers. So I just want to say that you know, I'm not sure if Director Borrego could be prepared to go into this kind of detail at this meeting tonight. Yeah, and I also must mention, I know that the board really doesn't like it when I talk about time, but I believe that this meeting was scheduled to end at 8:30, and we have not yet had any public comment, and you know, and we have an option for taking some action tonight. So I want to be sure that we have time to listen to public comment. I see that we have 350 participants, and time to come back to the board for further discussion. And given that, I'll hand it back over to Superintendent Wells regarding Vice President Duran's questions.
President Trutain, I think Jacob, Trustee Clark had his hand up.
Well, but don't you want your questions answered?
Sure, but I thought we would finish with Trustee Clark before.
Oh yeah, definitely we will. Yeah. But so we have to get through your answers if those are available, or hear a response from staff regarding that. And then we'll go to Trustee Clark, and then we'll go to public comment. And after public comment, then we'll bring it back to the board.
I really appreciate Vice President Duran questions, all of which are not in Ms. Borrego wheelhouse. And what I would like to do is take those questions and answer them and send them to all the board and post them on the website so that everyone can see the response to those questions, because those are fair questions. And I think those questions and answers need to be transparent. But I think there was maybe close to 10 or 12. And I'd like for us to answer them in detail. And so I'd like to have the opportunity to come back this week, or tomorrow's Friday, or early next week with those answers to the questions to all the board members and post them in a summary format for the community as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wells. We move to Trustee Clark.
Yeah, thank you, President Trutain. I'll try to keep this quick. I just wanted to kind of reiterate with what Trustee Doss was saying the other night about certain people being able to be more involved in the board meetings, or being able to kind of reach out to other folks and get letters together that they're going to send to the board. There's a lot of other people out there who have serious concerns, and we need to make sure that even if we don't hear them, that I'm hoping that the board and the staff acknowledges those folks, because sometimes I think it's just like the loudest group, or the people who advocate the most, they're the ones that get heard, and the other people just kind of get lost in it all. So Trustee Doss brought this up, and I hope other people keep that in mind, that there is a huge segment of folks out there who would like to participate and get stuff into us, and they may not be able to, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't acknowledge that they need us to advocate for them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Clark. And I do see that we have 10 participants with their hands raised. At the parent forum earlier today, comments were limited to 1 minute, and people did a fantastic job of making their point and letting others be heard. I'd like to see if we could try that. And I am happy to open the floor to public comments.
President Trutain, may I make a recommendation?
Sure.
The 1 minute, I think it's good, but if you have any labor group who represent a whole group, maybe they get a couple of minutes. For example, any president of any group, labor group.
Certainly, that sounds like a good idea to me.
President Trutain, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Our scheduled meeting ends in like 13 minutes, so I would like to propose that we extend the meeting till 9:30, or make a motion.
That's a good idea too. So, and
I
that,
second that.
yeah, we won't get interrupted in the middle of public comment if we do that. So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Shen, could you do a roll call vote for a 1 hour extension?
Yes, Trustee Clark,
Yes?
Vice President Duran,
Yes.
President Trutain,
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley,
Yes.
Trustee Doss.
Yes.
Okay. The extension passes unanimously. And now we will move to public comment. Annie Alcott is our first speaker.
Thanks very much. I'm Annie Alcott and I teach kindergarten at Cornell. During this pandemic, people have been telling teachers how much we are valued. But I'm here to tell you that my colleagues and I are not feeling valued by everyone right now. Teachers want to reopen in person. Remember, we're the ones who are implementing all of this change. We're the ones working 6 to 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day to pivot every aspect of our programs into rich, meaningful, robust online learning. We cannot do more. We're the ones who problem solve on a daily basis with our fabulous parents who are stressed. Why are we doing this? Because we are dedicated to our students. It's really that simple. And we want to come back more than almost anything. Above all, we must prioritize health, our family's health, our students' health. Every one of us has a wide web of people that we love and are responsible for. We have parents, we have spouses, we have children. What if one of us contracts COVID-19 at work and infects one of those family members? What if a teacher dies? What if, God forbid, we infect a student? How am I going to sleep at night? How are you going to sleep at night? You're asking teachers to risk so much to return to normal. Things are really still not normal. In New York City, which is way ahead of California in mitigating the spread of this virus, schools opened up just a couple of weeks ago. They're now closing zip code by zip code. We should take their experience as a cautionary tale. The question comes down to this: are teachers actually valued in this community? I hope that's just a rhetorical question. And until it is truly safe for teachers, students, and employees to come back in person, we just are going to have such a hard time coming back. I urge you to please take the time to do this right. Make us all safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alcott. We move to our next speaker, Ms. Hernandez.
Hi, yes, I'm Mrs. Enriquez. I am a parent here in Albany, but for me, I feel like we are not ready to open schools. I think it's not safe for the kids, it's not safe for the parents, even though I understand some parents may need some of that support, but we need to make sure that we are making sure that everyone is going to be safe if we were to open. And also, I feel like, I know that you guys say that there's 100%, if you do remote learning, that the teacher will be the one. Will there be any changes? Because I would prefer for my son to continue with that teacher doing remote learning for the whole time, because I have a child that could be at risk of getting COVID if any of us got infected. So could you please answer that question for me?
Ms. Enriquez, I believe that the new plan for remote learning hasn't been completely fleshed out yet, but I did see on Assistant Superintendent Williams' slide that the 100% remote learning plan would be run by AUSD teachers and would include both synchronous and asynchronous aspects. And the current plan that we're on has those features too. So I don't think it's completely fleshed out yet, but to me, it sounds similar. It has synchronous and asynchronous elements, and it will be run by AUSD teachers. I'd like to move on to our next speaker, please.
Ben, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. My name is Ben Wallace. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, first I'd like to say that, you know, my daughter is enrolled in a cohort setting in aftercare run by the City of Albany. It's working great. And it's just a lifesaver for us. And I think that the school district should look at people, it's different setting, of course, but I think we should look at people who are doing this and learn from them. I also want to, I really, really think it's vital for us to open up cohorts for high needs learners. And I'm very concerned. I I was actually told by the superintendent back in July that there was a chance that kids with high needs might be able to go back to school on day one. And I actually changed my summer plans due to that eventuality, but it's clear that by day one there was.
Okay. We lost Mr. Wallace. I want to go on to our Albany Teachers Association co-president, Chris Knight, who will have 2 minutes as he represents the teachers.
Thank you. We want to come back to school when it is a safe place to teach and learn. Albany's teachers got into this profession to teach. That's what we're currently doing. That's what we're going to continue to do. We've heard tonight about some of the preparations the district has taken or may take, which are consistent with Alameda County's guidelines. But within these guidelines, there are still many details that we in Albany need to think about. For example, Alameda County advises bi-monthly COVID surveillance testing for all staff, but is every other month frequent enough? How do we maximize ease of testing for staff so they don't have to miss teaching time to get tested? And how do we do this at a time when many other school districts will also be demanding it? The county also advises that students or staff exhibiting COVID-like symptoms are sent home, but that no others in the cohort or class are alerted. Will we follow these guidelines, or will we alert parents so they can choose to keep their children home when that individual is awaiting test results? The county advises waiting for 5% of students in a cohort, classroom, or school site to test positive before that cohort, classroom, or school site is shut down. Will we follow these guidelines or shut down earlier? What if Alameda County re-enters the purple tier, indicating COVID-19 is once again widespread? The county has no guidance for action to take in that situation. Will we remain open? These are just a few examples of the very important issues to be considered in just one area of the reopening plan. There are 12 major components of that plan that need to be considered before it can be approved. In addition, we need to take a realistic look at the district's resources and current state right now. We have 1 nurse, we are at a bare minimum custodial staff, and many sites are inadequately ventilated. These questions may seem abstract now. They will be very real for our students, families, and staff when individuals are getting sick in close quarters. Signed, Chris Knight and Stephen Naif, co-presidents, Albany Teachers Association.
Thank you, Mr. Knight and Mr. Naif. We'll move to Jeffrey Luna Sparks.
Hi, yes, I am one of the elementary music teachers in Albany, and I just wanted to say that as I teach my students every day, I miss them so much, and I wish that I could be in person, and I wish that we could have regular school, but it's about their health and safety as well as the teachers' health and safety. We have put 6+ months into quarantining, not going on vacations, isolating ourselves and masking and wearing masks all over the place. And we have been very, very careful. Please, let's not throw that away and jump back into school. If you take 5% of the students that would get sick or 5% of the teachers, that would be devastating to have someone have that virus for the rest of their lives.
Thank you, Mr. Luna Sparks. We'll move to Sarah Haller.
Good evening. I'm an Albany teacher as well as an Albany parent, and I want to just remind the board and the community that many of us are teachers and parents. And while we talk about the needs of our students, some having higher needs than others, and the need for certain staff members to return sooner than others, I'd like to urge everyone to consider how that would impact families whereby teachers do not have school for their own children. And that would cause hardship on certain members of our population and maybe not on others. So we're going to need to work together. As Dr. Wells has said, to come up with creative solutions that create an environment whereby we can all work together to do what's best for our communities. I also want to just make a note that I really appreciate Mr. Doss's comments about the really significant hardships families are facing, and hope that we can continue to think about ways to get us all back in school when it is safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holler.
Sorry to interrupt. I missed the previous speaker. Can anybody give me a quick recap as to, I think it was our esteemed music teacher who spoke, and I missed it.
Okay, so Mr. Luna Sparks said that he really wishes that he could be back with his students in person. He feels that every time he goes online and starts a lesson. But he also very much wants to be safe. And I gathered from his remarks that he just didn't feel like it was a safe situation. He mentioned that if 5% of our staff or 5% of our students were to get COVID, that how devastating that would be. Now let's go ahead and move.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. To our next speaker, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Winokur. I'm the father of a kindergartner at Marin School. Just wanted to, again, like everybody else, acknowledge all the complexity and difficulty and stress that's gone into us, into this process for everyone. I have pretty much a short question, which is just about what we can reasonably expect in terms of what can be achieved in terms of social, emotional, and intellectual development in hybrid only versus an online only model. Is it reasonable to expect that kids can still reach the same milestones, reach the same outcomes if they are online only? Or should we assume that we have to give something up if we're remote only as opposed to hybrid? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winokur. Our next speaker is Lila.
Hello, this is actually Dale, Lila's husband. I just want to express disappointed and frustrated that we expressed, I think as parents overall, months ago, the lack of preparation, and here we are, unprepared. Every private business has figured it out, Starbucks, restaurants, because if they didn't figure it out, they had no funding source. But the district and the teachers, they get our tax dollars no matter what, so there's no incentive for them to figure it out and get like the rest of the world. We've heard from the labor groups in excess tonight. So far, we're 6 teachers' minutes, 2 parent minutes in this session. And we as the citizens pay for their services. We as tax-paying citizens still have to go to work and risk all the things that the teachers state that are the risks. So all for that, for us to be able to pay their salaries. I myself work with COVID positive people. I have precautions on in an ambulance from time to time. Multiple people in a day. 6 months, I haven't got COVID. My daughter works in an ICU. 6 months, multiple COVID positive people, takes precautions, has not been COVID positive. I'm absolutely against.
Okay. We'll move on to Carrie Dunnigan.
Hi there. I just want to be clear. Board Member Duran misrepresented earlier tonight in the forum what I had said about teachers wanting to return. Of course we did. But if you're not going to quote me in full, then please don't quote me. My point was that 4 decades of underfunding public education has left us with shortages in teachers, subs, custodians, secretarial staff, support. It's across the board. And if we don't have a plan for what we're going to do when people get sick, and I'm not talking about COVID, I am talking about bronchitis, the flu, the common cold. When teachers go out and are unable to teach, when the custodial staff goes out and is unable to clean, what is the plan? And you cannot mandate that the district fix this when there is a statewide shortage. The people aren't there. No matter what the district does to try to get that back up, it's not there.
Thank you, Ms. Dunnigan. We'll move to Tanya Finley.
teacher at Cornell School, and I just want to thank President Trutain for bringing up the subject of resources and Trustee Hinckley for speaking on the subject of science and safety. The truth is we are not prepared. We are already in a budget shortfall, and even before COVID, as other teachers have pointed out, we were short subs and supplies. Teachers regularly taught when they were sick because there didn't seem to be another option. This isn't an option under COVID. If we go back to school in person, whether it's hybrid or fully, students and teachers are going to get sick. So when you are building a plan, I really hope that you take this into consideration. What are we going to do when students and teachers ultimately are getting sick? Will there be backup for us? Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Renee Howley. I believe that this is one of our bargaining unit representatives, and so Ms. Howley should have 2 minutes.
Hi, yeah, my name is Renee Howley. I'm the CSEA president. I also am one of the 4 teachers brought back to the Albany Children's Center. I agree with ATA. I also want to say that it's funny, my daughter would always ask me why I chose to be a teacher or work in the schools. And I says, well, it's not for the pay, that's for sure. But I love the kids. I really love the kids. I have been here 32 years. And for that one reason, I hope that we don't open in person until we can be as safe as we possibly can, because I would feel horrible if, as they said before, if I brought that home to my family, to my mother who's 78, my children who are young, but not that young, if I gave it to a child in my care, I just hope that we take the time, take the precautions that we need to protect everybody involved. And at the ACC right now, we're making wonderful packets for the kids. We put in Halloween treats, we put in special things now and then. We make them so enriched. We're doing so much with the kids online, and I am so new to working online, but I'm doing it. I'm managing to do it, and the kids are liking it, and they're returning work, and it makes me so happy when I get their work back and I hear their voices on Seesaw and videos, and it's working, and we're safe. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howley. We move to.
Before we go to the next speaker, something randomly popped in my head, and I thought about writing it down, but it's kind of related to ACC, so I thought I would mention it. I really liked hearing all the different things that are happening with the students there. I would like to, if the staff could take note, I'd like to know how many kids are participating in that on a daily basis. So I'd like to, if we do stay remote longer, moving forward, as of Monday, I'd like to take roll and figure out how many students are participating on a daily basis with that, so the board can have a good idea of who's benefiting from all those great things that Ms. Renee just mentioned. Thank you.
Duly noted and much appreciated.
Now we'll move on to Lauren. Go ahead, Lauren. Lauren, you're live. I believe that's the end of our public comment. Oh, wait, we have another community member who's raised their hand. Please go ahead, Martin Sanchez.
Hello. So this is Martine's wife, Latasha. I just wanted to maybe touch on a possible option. Of course, the children's health and the teachers' health and all the staff is of the utmost importance. One thing I wanted to bring up was if there would be the possibility of having kind of like ACC teachers going into the classrooms to help set up children and having these pods at the school sites while teachers remain at home doing the synchronous and asynchronous learning. But then that gives the chance for such as like children's from faculty, medical worker, and at-risk children are able to actually be on site and have it, I don't know, it would be safer for the children that are at risk. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your idea. Now, we move to our next speaker now, please. Our next speaker is Vivian Martin. Vivian Martinez. I'm sorry, I can only.
Sorry, I was just, it's actually my daughter. She's in kindergarten. I'm her dad, Randolph Martinez.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I tried doing them on mine, but it just wouldn't. So I just wanted to get in. I want to say thank you to everyone who's been talking about, and this type of discussion is what really is going to drive our success eventually, whether it's now or a month from now, whatever the time is. I just want to recognize that. Second, I do have some good things and some bad things to say. Not extreme though. One is I like to ask how you're going to monitor how you implement the guidance from Alameda County on a day-to-day basis, and who's going to be in charge of monitoring that all procedures are being met at any given time. Second, if Alameda County changes its guidance, but Albany is definitely not where Alameda is at. Like the gentleman said, what about if Albany is not there and we need to scale back? Who's going to be monitoring that?
Thank you. Dr. Wells, do you want to address that question?
Yes, we, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a dashboard that we will update weekly in terms of the progress we're making so that it's very transparent in terms of the checklist. And so it won't be updated daily, but it would be updated weekly, like every Friday.
I believe that Mr. Martinez is asking perhaps about COVID cases, and we would make sure that the guidelines are being followed. And if the case rate becomes high in the county, but is still low in Albany schools.
We will want to have that as part of our dashboard because we want to be very transparent. If there's a COVID case, we want folks to know it. We don't want to keep it secret. And so we want to have that as part of our, somehow incorporated as part of our dashboard, because that's a huge issue.
And I will say that I believe that the authority for closing schools, as for opening schools, rests with the superintendent. So what I heard from Alameda County is that even if the county were to change tiers, once the school is reopened, it would be allowed to remain open. So it would still rest with the district. Dr. Wells, is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding as well. I met with the superintendent, county superintendent, all of the superintendents in the county Tuesday morning.
Okay, I think we need to move on to our next speaker, Dashel Stewart Van. I'm sorry, I can only see part of the name. Dashel Stewart Van Young, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Dashiell's mom again. I have a TK student at Cornell and a third grader at Marin. And I wanted to make a suggestion. I don't know if you've considered this, but we know that there are families who have to go back to school for various reasons. And we know there are families who can't go back also for a variety of reasons. And so I'm wondering why this has to be so black and white, all or nothing, and why we can't take more creative measures. We could poll families and ask who has to go back, who can handle staying home for a while longer. We could poll teachers with the same questions and then pair those groups up. I don't understand why we can't have teachers who must stay home, and then conduct remote learning for students who must stay home. Why can't we have teachers who want to go back conduct hybrid learning for students who are able to go back? I think that there are some matches to be made here, and I think it requires some creativity to make it happen, but I think it can happen. And I wonder if you've considered that.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next speaker, Lila Knox. Please go ahead.
Hi, it's Layla Knox. I have an 8th grader in the middle school, and I just want to reiterate what I've written to you and said earlier in the day, which is we cannot wait 5 months for our daughter to be back in front of her teachers. We just simply can't. She is losing valuable time in terms of her education. It's really hard for me to drive down Solano and see, you know, the packed taco place and all these packed restaurants when we're not thinking about our kids first. So I really urge you, and I also hope that one thing that I haven't heard a lot of here is like, what is the science telling us? What have we learned since the spring about wearing masks and being distanced? And, you know, a lot of my kids were in camps all summer long, no incidents at any of their camps because they followed these really safe practices. So I really, really urge you to think about ways, and I think we can do this. I mean, we can, for the families that want and need to have their kids back in school, we can make this happen, and we can make it happen safely. It's not mutually exclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Kyung Pak.
Hi, yes, thank you. Just a short suggestion. I wanted to just bring up the equity issues that Trustee Clark and Trustee Doss brought up about whose voices are heard, whose voices are not, who has access to these meetings. Just a follow-up, you know, a suggestion about when you do send out these surveys or these polls. I'm a relatively new Marin parent, but with any survey that I've received, there hasn't been any other translation except for English. And there are many families in our community where English is not the first language. So if you do want to hear from all parents, I would just suggest that when you do send out the next survey to make sure that there are other translations available.
Thank you for that suggestion. Our next speaker is Eva Strohmeyer.
Hi, thank you. This is Ava's partner, Erin. We have a daughter in 6th grade going into middle school. And I fully understand the need for childcare and support for all families in these exceptional circumstances. But I also recognize that the primary role of education is to educate. And that although we depend on our educational system to provide childcare, I also wonder to what degree there are efforts being made to work with other city and county and statewide organizations to provide support on multiple levels in terms of childcare, in terms of economic support, and that this responsibility doesn't fall solely on the schools and the teachers to come up with a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joan Bernier.
Hi, thanks so much. This is Joan. I hope you can hear me. I just wanted to note that I really thank the board. I thank the teachers during this. This is a challenging time and you all are doing so much work. I have been watching the COVID cases in Albany, and from July 8th to October 8th, jumped 3 times. Starting July 8th, we had 18 cases in Albany. And by October 8th, we now have 59. I'm not very good at math, but I'm learning it, teaching my kids fractions. I just want to say that obviously these are tiny numbers compared to all of Alameda County, but given the changes of the weather, I'm concerned as a parent about how these can rise even more. Thank you for your time. That's all.
Thank you. I believe that we've already heard previously in this discussion from Carmen Enriquez. I think we should move to Julie Busgang now, please.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I teach reading at Marin School. And I just feel like I love the idea of being able to be back with my students, and the proposal I've heard so far, I feel like there's still so many unanswered questions, and I would like to make sure that they get answered, and the devil's in the details, and that those get worked out before we start. So one question is, with the hybrid, if students are being in school for 2 days, who is programming and with them those other 2 days that they're not in school? If a hybrid is whole day, what will lunch and recess look like? If students are at school and they take their masks off or they touch other kids, what happens? What recourse do we have if it's a repeated issue? Because they're kids and it's really hard for them. Do they get to still keep coming, or what happens? And for specialists who work with many, many different kids in many, many different classrooms, what does that look like if we're talking about cohorts of 14, but they don't stay at just 14 because they work with everybody? So how will that be handled?
Thank you, Ms. Busgang. I appreciate that. Next speaker is Phyllis Rothblatt.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for all of this that you're doing. I know that this is extremely difficult and that people have really complex needs. I want to say, listening to this, that I don't feel like I've gotten any answers. I feel like a lot of issues have been brought up, and I've had so many times as I've listened to people that I've said, yes, how are you going to deal with that? And the process that we're in doesn't give us information. We're just bringing up the issues. And so as a parent, I wouldn't be able to make any decisions until I have a lot of those answers about how things are actually going to work. I'd want to know specifically what the backup plan is. And for those parents who really, really need the care for their children, if a hybrid model is actually going to be enough for them, and if we should be instead looking at specifically how do we improve on the model that we have, and then address the needs of special learners and parents who need their kids to be cared for in a different way. So
thank you. Next speaker is Chris Carubacats.
Hi there. Thank you again for listening. I wanted to just echo my gratitude to my fellow parents out there and to trustees who are parents and board members. I have a high schooler, 9th grader, a 2nd grader, but I also have a 2-year-old. Since March, because my wife and I are essential workers, and we have had our toddler in 4 different care places because of need, because we have to work. If we don't work, the wheels of justice fall off. So in those 4 daycare situations, he has not even had a sniffle because of the responsible adults. We know that there are many answers that need to be made. Teachers, I hear you. If you have to go back to work and you can't be home with your kids, I get it. Our daycare costs have doubled in the COVID times. And I'm not suggesting that I want your cost to double. I just hope the school district can give us all a really good plan so we can all get through this together.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rita Lucarelli. Go ahead, Ms. Lucarelli.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Hi, so I'm the mother of a fifth grader at Cornell, and I'm Italian. I'm just back from Italy, and I wanted to share my experience being there the whole summer and having many friends who are teachers and parents there. Probably you know that they already opened the school in Italy with the hybrid model. Is it working? Sometimes some schools close when there is a case. They deep clean everything, they reopen. It's still working. The kids are really happy, the parents are happy, the teachers too. But they had a lot of help from the government. They had special funds for reopening. They bought new furniture, chairs with wheels, new personnel. I wonder how is it possible for us to reopen if there are no special funds for that? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucarelli. Next speaker, Andrea Venezia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your service and for allowing us to speak. I'm a parent of an 8th grader and a 10th grader, and yesterday another AHS parent, Sarah Marcelino, and I drafted and sent a letter to you all from signatories from 37 households. We're grateful that you've read it, and we're grateful to the people who jumped in with little warning to sign it. So it's clear that this is breaking some families, and I'm worried that the longer you take to figure out how to open at scale across all the schools, the longer this will take and the more families will suffer. I think this is too complex, given that we've gotten to this point without a plan to open all grades at scale in the time frame that you proposed when our families are suffering the way they are. So I'm urging you to please focus on equity and not on equality. Reopening for all with a one-size-fits-all hybrid model is equality. Reopening for those who need it most is equity. Having focus could enable you to create a really good plan, be clear about the details, and let parents know about the details so we can make informed choices knowing all the implications. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Özlem Ayduk. Hi, Dr. Ayduk.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for hearing us all out. I know it is a very complicated situation and there are no easy answers. One thing that I, as a psychologist, I can say is the effect of change and unpredictability on children. So one of my problems among other concerns that I have about the children going back to school is the change in their schedule, change in expectations, change in teachers. If something goes wrong and they have to go back to a previous model of learning, the back and forth is quite distressing and harmful for children's mental health. So I wanted that to be one of the considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mark Wilson.
I want to go back to school.
Stand.
And I'll wear a mask, and I don't like Zoom school, and I want to see my friends. And this is Addie speaking, a fourth grader.
Well, thank you very much for joining our meeting and speaking. Our next speaker is Amy Cappell.
Hi. So I wanted to just express my appreciation for what the teachers are doing and my great sense of how essential the teachers are. They're essential workers. And if we're going to have teachers returning to any form of in-person instruction, I would really like to see those who return getting some form of hazard pay. I don't know where that funding would come from, and the president's most recent news is not encouraging, but I would like it if the district could look at that. And the other thing I would really like someone to discuss is what the status of talks between the school district and the labor unions are right now. We keep hearing that's the stopping block. What does it take to get past that? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joel Urvice.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much for all your hard work on this. Board Member Doss, I really appreciated what you said earlier in this conversation about wanting to alleviate the pain as soon as possible for those most in need. Board Member Hinckley, I also really appreciate your comment about a robust remote learning will keep kids home, which means it's safer for anyone who is in person. And ultimately, though, I'm still concerned that the plan is not concrete enough to protect the students and staff. The checklist is great. Working towards that checklist is great, but it seems like there's still so much we don't know. And so I would recommend not pushing the timeline up. Aim for it. Push as hard as you can to see if you can get it. But I think we need to know that, kids, more and more evidence is emerging that kids are vectors. Caution is warranted, especially as we enter a cold and flu season. So I would not rush the timeline at this point in time. Thanks.
Thank you. We have Jason Vargo and then Stephen Bailey. And then I really think, given the lengthy comments that we had on our Tuesday meeting and then the parent forum earlier tonight and the lengthy comments that I really am going to need to bring it back to the board so that the board can finish discussing and possibly take an action. So like I said, Jason Vargo and Stephen Bailey will be our last speaker. Go ahead, Mr. Vargo.
Hi, this is Lauren. We have 2 kids in Cornell, and they have been in in-person programs for the past 4 months. They have not had any cases of COVID in their programs. It's going really well. It just makes me so sad that they are not with their teachers and they are not learning much as they could be learning. And if the programs are doing this, the counselors are doing this, I just really wish the teachers could do something similar. I also wanted to bring a concern I have that I haven't heard any presentation by a medical or public health advisory board. I think there's a lot of fear among the community and the parents and the teachers that I think the board would really benefit from an advisory on these issues. I just want to point out for perspective that there are about 22,000 cases of COVID in Alameda. Only 59 of those have been reported from Albany. The percent positivity in Albany is one of the lowest of the counties. The case rate is also one of the lowest in the county. And I think some perspective about what the risk actually is of in-person school, along with how to handle testing and how to...
Thank you. Doctor, and our last speaker, Stephen Bailey, go ahead, please.
Thank you for all your consideration of these issues. As I understand the current plan, it says that the remote instruction will be provided by AUSD staff and that students will receive their instructional minutes every day. But I think they also assert that that's true right now on Wednesdays as well as the other days. But the reality on the ground is Wednesdays are very different in terms of the kind of instruction that students are getting compared to the other days. And for some students, some families that might prefer the Wednesdays with very little Zoom and a lot of independent time. Other families may prefer it the other way around. We need a much more specific plan than just that it will be by staff and they'll receive their minutes. We need to know, what fraction of time is being spent in the 2 different modalities to be able to make informed decisions. And thank you again for your consideration of all these issues. It's tough planning. Thanks for your work on that.
Thank you very much. And with that, I feel like I need to bring it back to the board for further discussion. The superintendent brought us a modified proposal for a plan for pivoting to hybrid. I think that if there's any final quick questions from the board, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Trustee Hinckley.
I just wanted some clarity on the two first items, the November 5th and the December 3rd targets. So maybe it would be helpful to put the, what is the word I'm looking for, slide up with the dates. So in the meantime, so November 5th says preschool / school age hubs, a 1:7 ratio. And then December 3rd says preschool / school age at a 1:14 ratio. So I can't quite tell if November 5th, the preschool part, is meant to also apply to the word hubs, or if it just means that the preschool part we would be opening November 5th is a subset of the kids, and that as of December 3rd, we would then have a larger number of kids, or what's happening at the preschool that's different on those two dates, leaving aside the school age part?
You just described it, Trustee Hinckley, quite accurately.
So you would invite half of the preschool families to come back November 5th, see how it goes for that amount of time, and then offer it to the rest of them. And at the 1:14 ratio, are you anticipating that services the entire preschool enrollment as we have it now, or is that anticipating that some number of preschool families would actually remain remote?
Based on our surveying, we would have 2 preschool classes open up eventually, 1:14. And
how many, so that would be 28 kids out of how many that are enrolled in the preschool right now?
We have the capacity for 48.
Physically. And that, because we can only have 14 kids in a class and we have 4 class. Okay. And then, so the school age, just to clarify, the hubs would be November 5th, and then December 3rd is the school age piece, has nothing to do with hubs. That is the childcare program where families, because this wouldn't be the hybrid model yet, they would be able to come full-time for childcare, or could you explain what that
Yeah, we have to give
is?
clarification for that, and we're going to give have a piece at every board meeting updating on that. But this should have been preschool exclusively, because we open up in phases, and working within the 6.5 hours a day, consistent with the contract.
So you don't have in this time frame the reopening of the childcare, the school age childcare program that we had talked about, that we had been talking about in that smaller committee. I'm just trying to figure out where that is in this universe, because that is a piece of supporting our families that are needing some kind of in-person activity or care.
Yeah, and that is correct. Those are the details that we would have to work out with the after-school care as we look at, as we continue to work with our labor unions. But we're trying to, was a draft that we came up with for now, but I think we may have to pivot for a whole number of reasons in terms of readiness with the after-school care. But in terms of preschool, we have a target date of being ready. With the after-school care, we're gonna have to go back and visit that and work out some details there.
Okay, so the December 3rd school age piece should say hubs after it. It's still hubs, not.
No, that's
or it just doesn't need to be there at all.
The December 3rd date the target date, we would move into the maximum 1:14
of the preschool.
Of the preschool.
Or, okay.
Okay, Vice President Durong.
Just two comments. One is that when we talked about the identification of which students would return, and it would be the district and the teachers or ATA making having those discussions and making the decisions. I would think that essential workers would be included in that. And as part of essential workers, that would include teachers' children as well. And the second point is that some parents tonight had asked about what's the science telling us. And I just wanted to read this from that came out just today. California has not seen a link between the reopening of K-12 schools for in-person learning and increased coronavirus transmission, the state's top public health official said Tuesday. Dr. Mark Ghali, the state's Health and Human Services Secretary.
Thank you, Vice President Durand. I don't see any other trustees. Oh, there we go. Trustee Doss, please go ahead.
Thank you. I didn't raise my hand because I was trying to give others an opportunity, being respectful of everybody's time here. I just have a couple of comments. And I'd like to, well, actually, first, I'd like to make a motion that we amend this to include bringing on a consultant of some sort, an epidemiologist, some type of doctor, to consult the district. I think that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're talking about reopening schools, and we're hearing from a lot of experts that are experts on education, but we haven't heard from any experts, doctors, where this is their job to do this. And other schools are opening, and I'm sure that they are hiring people or talking to people. I'd like for the board to, I'd like to make that request that we do that we amend this. And a couple other things I wanted to mention. I remember being a part of a committee, and it was like the ACC reopening committee. And we had like lots of meetings, and we met for hours, and we talked about reopening the ACC and how that would look. And then when we were voting a while back, where there was a chance that ACC might not be open and that we might not be using it during this time, we received a lot of emails from employees at ACC, teachers at ACC. We got pictures. I think I watched a video, and it talked about being ready to be open and being ready for kids. And they showed us pictures of the places, being 6 feet apart and being safe and ready for people to return. So I'm wondering what has changed there. It could be just that we were previously voting to close and not use ACC and the employees at that time. And then, so I don't know, but I think we talked about that for a while, and everybody seemed as if they were ready and open at that time. So I'd like to revisit all that work that was done to see if we can use that information to help speed this along, because we met for hours with teachers and staff and the superintendent and others. So we have these plans in place, and they've already been there working on it. Also, the last thing I wanted to say, well, not the last thing, but I'll say this and then give my time back for others, is that the UC Village has a program that's opening, but it is not free, and it is quite expensive. And so I have the information here, if you'll bear with me for a couple of moments. It is from 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. A laptop is required, and it's $220 a week. That's the cheapest program that they have available. They have one from 8:30 to 4:30. It's $320 a week. They have another one that's 8:30 to 6 p.m., $375 a week. And they also have one that is 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's $160 a week. These are not free. And we're in the middle of a time where people are cutting their hours or losing their jobs because our schools aren't open and they have to be home with their kids. There are programs available, but all these programs cost money. But we have the ability here to open these facilities and to do it safely, as others have mentioned. So I think it behooves us to reach out to our partners over at the UC Village, because these are not strangers. These are our partners that we work with, and to work with them and figure out how they're able to open this and how they're able to open it safely. Because they mentioned that they're going to be open, but they talk about safety. I don't want to read everything, but they talk about safety measures, and there's all these safety measures. Their pods that they're going to have are the exact same numbers of the preschool numbers that we have here, the 1 to 14. There's staff training. All employees are going to receive training in health and safety protocols. There's guidelines here. There's facility signage. There's cleaning and disinfection that they're going to participate in, health and wellness. These are our friends. These are that we work with. These are our colleagues. These are people that we have 2x2x2 meetings with. They're not strangers. Let's reach out to them, figure out the things that they're doing. It'll help us fill in a lot of the boxes that we don't have right now. It'll save us a lot of the time so that we can move up these dates. Thank you.
Trustee Clark?
Yeah, thank you, President Trutain. I had a question for Dr. Wells as far as these particular dates right here. Is there any reason that these particular dates, it looks like they all land on Thursdays, except for, I guess, the 6th through 12th grade? Looks like it falls on a Monday, I guess. I'm just kind of wondering why would it be in the middle of the week? Or not even the middle of the week, towards the end of the week.
In the case of January, thank you, Trustee Clark. In the case of January, as you know, we'll be coming back from the holiday break, the season break, and a couple days for teachers to have transition to get ready for their TK through first. That was the thinking. And then staying in with the model recommendation by the county is that we have a phase-in approach where we don't bring back too many folks at one time, so we try to space it out. And so that was the thinking. And then with the March 15th date for 12th graders, programmatically, as you look at the program, we thought it was best to have the secondary come back at either in a semester break or at a break at a quarter. And this is about the quarter for the high school and middle. And so that was the rationale for these targeted dates.
All right, thank you. I want to make sure every board member has a chance to speak, but I want to jump in front of everybody, but I do have a motion I'd like to make. But like I said, I don't know if other people have had a chance to speak yet.
Yeah, I don't have any further questions, Trustee Clark. So I feel free to make a motion.
Okay. If we can put those dates back up on the screen, that would be great. So yeah, for the first date, which was November 5th, which is be a Thursday, I would propose to move that up just a few days to November 2nd. For the second date, which is December 3rd, same thing, to move it up a few days to November 30th. For the next one, which was the January 7th date, move it up a few more days to January 4th. For the next date, which is January 14th, move it up a few days to January 11th. And for the next date, which is January 27th, to move that up to January 18th. And for 6th through 12th, that March 15th date, to move that up to February 1st. I know that was a mouthful, sorry, but just wanted to get all the dates down.
We can either accept that motion, or are we able to make amendments to the motion, or do we have to follow through with that one and then make an additional one?
So we should pause for a minute and see if that motion gets a second. And also if there's a friendly amendment, then Trustee Clark could consider the friendly amendment. He gets to decide whether he accepts that friendly amendment or not. And if it's a competing motion, then we would vote first on this and then later on any competing motion.
Okay, just the friendly amendment regarding the specification on the hubs and the start date on that, based on Trustee Hinckley's previous questions. I just wanted to get clarification on the start date of the hubs included in this motion. Would the hubs also start on the November 2nd date? And for what age groups?
Trustee Clark, do you want to comment on that, or would you like to ask Dr. Wells to comment on the relationship of the hubs to this schedule?
Trustee Doss could please repeat that. I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I just want to know if the school age hubs would be included in the November 2nd part of your motion, and if they are, what that would consist of, or what grades that would consist of.
Yeah, thank you. So the way I'm reading it, the way it's proposed for November 5th, that's preschool / school age kids, which means both to me. So I guess that would be the same for the December 3rd date, where I guess it goes up to 1 to 14. It would be preschool and school age kids as well. And we had talked a lot about some people are really suffering under this model. So I think that's when staff would reach out to find out who needs to get back, sooner. I don't know if that's answering your question. I hope it is.
Yeah, that sounds like an answer to me. And so I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So Ms. Shen, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure, this will be starting with Vice President Duran.
No.
President Trutain.
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley.
No.
Trustee Doss.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
The motion passes with 3 in favor, Trustee Clark, Trustee Doss, and myself, and 2 opposed. That would be Trustee Duran and Hinckley opposed. So we have a modified date, set of target dates for our pivot to hybrid. And I appreciate everybody's tremendous work on this. And I want to reiterate that these are target dates. It doesn't mean that, that this is written in stone. The superintendent has made it very clear that we have hurdles still in place, particularly regarding surveillance testing, some air quality issues, and of course, working as a team with our bargaining units. Superintendent Wells also said that he is going to put our progress on these hurdles up on a dashboard on the district website so that the community can be informed exactly where we are. I will do a round of comments now. We've got a lot of hands up. I believe that Trustee Hinckley's hand was up first.
Sure, thanks. So I have a few points. I'll try to stick to 3. So one is that I just want to reiterate that I really want to see a much clearer plan for protecting the health and safety of our kids and our staff. And so I don't know how that plays out in future meetings, but you know, we're often told that we're responsible for saying the what and the staff is responsible for the how. But I think in this case, particularly since we have a plan that has changed so rapidly, that I am very committed to wanting to be involved in the how this actually plays out. And I also want to express my confidence that the staff will participate in creating that in the bargaining process, and that information will come back to us. I just want to be very clear for me personally as a board member that I need to see a lot more about the details of how we're going to protect health and safety here. The second thing I want to say is that we, I think, have not done a good enough job ensuring participation and communication, and I'm not the first person to bring this up. We often find ourselves in a position of having to guess what people that aren't participating in these calls want and need. And I feel like we haven't made a substantial effort at all to find that out. So I want to reiterate what I asked for Tuesday, which is a good survey that we implement with a clear response deadline through all the channels, the texting, the emailing, and really making sure we hear from our families, because I love hearing from the same people repeatedly, but I will also say that I feel like I've heard from the same 30 families over and over again, and that is not an adequate, that's not adequate for us as a district as a form of participation, nor is a forum that is announced essentially 24 hours before it happens. So I just want to sort of plead for better communication, including that this plan be emailed to people, not in a link, but in a format that they can easily access and read. The last thing I want to say is that I'm surprised that we voted to have a target date for 6th through 12th grade without having been presented any model of what that looks like instructionally, in terms of preserving the continuity of the education of our high schoolers who have often as many as 7 teachers, high schoolers who have contact with as many as 200 kids. So I'm also, you know, if that is a real target date, we need to see a plan for what that looks like. I have many other concerns about high school, but we haven't even begun to talk about it. And yet we've set a date that is now 3 months away. So I have some grave concerns that I hope that Dr. Wells, you can begin to bring to us real plans for what that looks like. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Hinckley. Closing comments from Vice President Durand.
I'd like to say that I'm disappointed with the vote, that we have heard a lot and we've done our own talking about trying to address the most vulnerable students and needy parents and families. We had a parent just tonight say they had 3 days left of leave, and yet we've put off our attempt at hybrid until what, 2 months almost from today? The other comment I'd want to say is that science says we can do this, and all of us can go and find evidence, articles, whatever that says we can't do this. At the moment, the state doctor has said we can do this. I read you the quote. The county office, public health department has said we can do it. So parents asked tonight, what does the science say? That is what the science says. And no, we can never offer 100% guarantee. Of course we can't do that. On the other hand, it is the parents that are making the final decision about whether they would send their children back to school or not us. We provide the options. And we've just kicked the option, the second option for our most neediest kids down the road. So I wanted to say that tonight. Thank you.
I have a question, point of clarification. So we made so this is a meeting, where the meeting is in place for us to make amendments to this plan, correct?
I think, Dr. Wells, do you want to address that?
Well, it seemed as if the plan, with all the element, is the plan as a whole. The board took a piece of the plan, the dates, and adjusted them and voted on the dates. They haven't yet to vote on accepting or rejecting the plan or accepting with some amendments to the plans yet. And so it's appropriate if the board either accept or reject or accept with some amendments to the plan at sometime tonight.
Okay, so with that being said, if Trustee Duran or Trustee Hinckley had additional amendments or additional suggestions related to this plan, they could say those and we could vote on those this evening?
Oh, wait, I thought that Trustee Clark's motion was to accept the superintendent's plan with the revision of the target dates.
That's not what I voted on. That is absolutely not what I voted on.
Clark, Trustee Clark, what was your motion exactly?
You stated it well. I mean, it was Frank's presentation with the tweak on the dates, with Brian, Trustee Doss's question about the hubs, and we voted on it.
Thanks for the clarification.
So that's not my understanding. I thought that we only talked about the dates. Trustee Clark went through and talked about the dates. So what I assumed is that he was making an amendment to those dates, and then we voted on those dates. Not that we voted on this entire plan. Because then also there were other trustees that had additional things that Trustee Duran stated, I think about an hour ago or so, that she was also wanted to make a motion, but didn't make that motion. It was my assumption that she was going to make that motion after we voted on those dates, not the plan entirely, because the plan isn't even complete, which I thought we were going to work through this evening. So if my vote was for that entire plan, that was not my understanding. So I don't know what we need to do next, but that wasn't my understanding of this.
Okay, then it becomes a parliamentary question.
I want to, President Tutane, I want to reiterate something I mentioned right when we started the board meeting. The plan is evolving, and no one would be precluded from giving recommendations for it. We heard what the board, we listened to all the board members tonight. We heard what they wanted in the plan in terms of the details. And we're starting to work with our bargaining unit members on that. And so the plan is going to be evolving. It's going to look very different than what it looks next week than what it looks today, based on the information that we come up with and the solutions, the creative solutions we come up with our bargaining units, coming up with more details. And so the plan doesn't stop here, meaning that once the board vote on it, that don't mean we don't fill in all those holes. Staff is going to be working on doing all that with its bargaining unit members. And so the plan is going to be looking very different and more complete as we begin to work on it together. And so I would say give
I
us a
don't,
chance. Oh.
I'm sorry. I apologize. And I'm sorry. I apologize for cutting you off. I don't feel comfortable with just the board will make recommendations as we move down the line. And I'll just be candidly honest. When I make recommendations that are outside the board meeting, they are heard, and I think that my actual words, I think, are taken with respect. But I don't see them implemented the way that they are implemented when we vote at a board meeting. We just had a vote, but it was not made clear to me, and the understanding that I had was that we were specifically talking about the dates. We did not go through the plan and make any changes or make any additional amendments. There was a board member who previously said that she was going to make a motion, and we hadn't heard her motion yet. So it can't just be, oh, this vote stays, because it was a vote that was made not under the understanding of what we were doing there. So one, I'd like to hear Trustee Duran's, Vice President Duran's motion that she said that she was going to state. Trustee Hinckley has already made very clear that the plan is not even complete, and that there is a whole section of students that we haven't discussed in order to have a complete plan. It was very clear that we were voting on the dates and that we weren't voting on this whole plan. I do not agree with just ending this meeting this evening and then the board just making recommendations as the plan goes on, because it doesn't really work like that. And we are not individuals where we give individual instruction to the superintendent. We are a board of 5, and we give instruction during the board meetings. And so that's how it works. It's not like as we kind of plan over time. So we need to, I don't know if we need to redo it. I don't know if we need more clarification. I don't know exactly what it is that we need to do, but we need to fix what's happening here. I don't agree with just giving different ideas as we go down the road. We need to discuss this tonight, and it needs to be very clear. And I don't feel like it's clear at this point in time. Thank you.
Maybe I could help just a little bit, President Trutain. A clarification in terms of what I had said earlier tonight, Trustee Doss, that I had wanted to, that I did have a proposal, and it specifically had to do around the calendar dates. So I had wanted to really move up the dates for the hybrid model of instruction to begin sooner. And I mentioned as part of what I talked about that I wanted to see a date for a middle school and high school plan that would be presented to us so that we could discuss it way before, it actually would roll out. But my specific proposal or idea was specifically around the calendar dates. But since Trustee Clark went first, which is fine. He had the dates, and 3 out of the 5 members went with those dates. So that, to me, in terms of that was really the proposal I was going to bring forth about the specific dates. And in terms of the actual plan and what that would look like, I did speak to some of those issues that I am really concerned about everything from the health and safety reopening plan to the mental health focus, to students that we definitely need to reach out to. So there were other elements, but I think I said them tonight, basically. And there's always stuff that can be tweaked, but I believe that the superintendent would bring that back to us. And yes, that I agree with you that in a public forum is the best place for us to comment, because sometimes our one-on-one, we don't see those changes. So I understand that and would appreciate, it coming back to the full board for further discussion about the specific plans going forward.
Okay, so just to be crystal clear, what is the process? Do I need to, because we did the vote and it wasn't clear, so do we re-vote? Do we vote again? Do I retract the vote? Like, what's the process?
So what you will be doing is you'll be submitting a motion to reconsider. So because you are one of the yes votes on a motion, you can have a motion to reconsider right now, or actually you could even have a motion to reconsider at our next meeting. But after that, it goes into finality. So if you want to, now is the time to submit your motion to reconsider.
So then I would make that motion to reconsider, and then we will be able to hear Vice President Duran's motion.
Yeah, but actually I think that the first thing that we would need to do is we need to vote on another extension because we've gone past our 9:30. So I would ask first that we try to extend because that, just because that is cleaner.
I'll move that we extend, since we're doing it in the hour increments, to 10:30, right? Is that, or when were we supposed to end? 10:30.
I'll second that motion. So Ms. Shen, can you have a vote on our extension?
Yes, that would start with you, President Trutain.
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley.
Yes.
Trustee Doss.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
And Vice President Duran.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The board voted unanimously to extend until 10:30. So that's our second 60-minute extension. And so that's as far as we could go. And then I hand the floor back to you, Trustee Doss.
Okay, and so then my next steps would be to retract the motion.
Make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, motion to reconsider.
Okay, so that brings the item back to the general floor. So what this means is that we're going to go ahead and continue our discussion about the superintendent's proposed plan for pivoting to hybrid. So I see Trustee Clark's hand up. Please go ahead, Trustee Clark.
Yeah, thank you, President Trutain. I just wanted to briefly state that before I did make my motion, I thought I was clear about not wanting to jump in front of anybody, to give people opportunities to do something before me. And then now after the vote is completed, I understand we have rules, and what Trustee Doss is doing is within the time frame. I'm just had a clarification question about that. So yeah, he was in the majority, but does he simply one person just simply gets to now have it brought back, or does the board have to vote on if the majority of the board wants it brought back?
No, for a motion to reconsider, if one of the approval votes decides to change their vote, they can do that, and it's automatic. So the board does not vote on that. So it simply puts the item back into discussion for the full board. So now the floor is open for any other motions.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
You're welcome. Okay.
I wanted to ask if Trustee Doss could talk a little bit more about what he had in mind in terms of, I mean, whether it's item by item going through the plan and seeing what are some of the issues that you're concerned with?
Sure. So there were two things that were sorry. It's there were two things that I was concerned with that I'd like to see added to the plan. One was the where I talked about having a consultant of some sort brought in, and so I wanted to add that to the plan. I'd like that to be included moving forward for whatever we vote on. And then the second part of it was Vice President Duran, you mentioned that you had a motion, like I said, a while back in the meeting, and so I'd like to hear that. before we move forward with another vote.
Given how that other vote was, I don't think people really want to hear the calendar dates, but I'll repeat them since you asked me. My proposal was basically to move the preschool through second grade in-school instruction, in-person instruction to November 2nd. A week later, have the third graders through fifth graders come back on November 9th. And I raised a question about the sixth graders because it gets a little bit more complicated, and I think there'd have to be definitely some in-depth discussion with the principal at the middle school. But since Alameda County had indicated through sixth grade, I felt it was important to at least consider it. And then for secondary, my recommendation was for second semester, the beginning of second semester. So it's quite a bit different than what Trustee Clark was proposing or has proposed.
So I'd like to give Dr. Wells a chance to comment on that.
I don't think there's anything else I can say at this point. I just think it's important that the board deliberates. And then I'll take the direction from the board. And so that's what I'm awaiting right now.
Well, I'm gonna push you on that. Do you think that the district is ready to open preschool through second grade on November 2nd and third through sixth grade a week later on November 9th? Do you think that that is possible?
What I think is that the dates that I had presented as a proposal is very realistic considering all the work we have to do. To bring it up any closer, we're looking at an impossibility, and I wouldn't want the board, I wouldn't want to mislead the board in thinking that we can meet those dates. Our teachers and our staff was very clear and articulate about safety being a priority, and we have to make sure we have our safety components in place before we bring kids back. And they won't be in place in December and November. And that's what I can tell you. We're hoping at the preschool they will be, but the rest will take some time. And so I don't know how to say it any differently. And that's why I came up with these proposed dates, with safety being first in mind. But we would work as hard as we can to try to meet the board dates. If the board says, here's what we wanted as a vote, that's what we're gonna work like the Dickens to do and try to meet those target dates.
I have a question for clarification. If I have two items that I'd like to see added to the plan, would I make a motion for those two items to be added to the plan? And then we continue discussing to approve the plan as a whole?
The short answer is yes, Trustee Doss. Was that for me?
Oh, that was for whoever had a good answer for me, so I appreciate it. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to add in-person assessments for special education as soon as in-person assessments for special education to start be added to the plan, and for those to correlate with the dates of the soonest that we decide on here. So for example, currently it says November 5th. So I would like to add a dash there and add in-person assessments for special education to that top there for whatever date that we decide that part will start. And for the second part of that, to add a specialist or consultant of some sort to assist the district as we move forward for the reopening plan. So I'd like to make that motion to have those added to the plan.
I'm going to turn the video, leaving $10. No.
Okay, so hearing no second, then that motion dies. I will say that we did pass a contract with Psyched Services for in-person assessments. So I know that the district is doing some in-person assessments because the board passed that contract in September. And Dr. Wells, can you describe where you're getting your medical guidance, your medical information?
Yes, we're getting our direction from the chief medical officer official of Alameda County, Dr. Moss. And so we're under his direction and have to adhere to his recommendation by law. My concern, so that's where we're getting our direction from.
Okay, I believe that Vice President Duran had, I think that the way that the hands are coming up, well, wait, let me see. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask the board. It's not clear to me whether Trustee Clark or Trustee Hinckley's hand is up next. Do either of you know which one of you was first?
I don't know, and I don't have a preference about going first either, so.
Okay, so then I believe I'll go with Trustee Clark.
Yeah, thank you, President Trutain. I'll defer to Board Member Hinckley.
Okay. Board
So,
member?
sure, thank you. So I feel like we could spend the next 6 hours making amendments to the body of the full plan, especially if we include the longer text version that we addressed on Tuesday. And so, you know, maybe I'm in the minority, I think, on the dates piece. So I think that is one piece. I did want to try to have a fuller discussion about how we can get some of the vital services provided as soon as possible, including the hubs. But I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to try to amend the plan itself through motions. At least, well, let me speak for myself. I think the changes I want to see really can't be accomplished by me making a series of motions, because part of what I want to see is just a much more detailed plan, including, you know, site plans. I'd like to hear from the principals, just that kind of ongoing planning and information that, as I said, and as Trustee Doss said, I think we really want to make sure that is clear to the public and to the board, and that we have an opportunity to make the same kinds of adjustments that we made on Tuesday, for example, about doing a 180 on what remote education would look like. So my concern is we already have a plan, you know, that had to be really revised in a 48-hour period. And I want to make sure that we catch those same types of things as the planning moves forward. But I don't feel equipped to take the ideas I'm having now and turn those into a series of amendments on this plan. And, you know, this plan ultimately is going to be a 30 to 40 page document. So that doesn't seem feasible to me. And, you know, I think the majority has already expressed their preference about the target dates. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I appreciate the opportunity to make motions about the body of the plan, but I think my concerns are a little bit bigger and more general.
Thank you, Trustee Hinckley. Trustee Doss?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up with if there was an official motion from Trustee Duran, or if we were still discussing.
Yeah, I didn't hear a motion there. So I think we're just still discussing.
sorry. I was going to say, Trustee Doss, I'm happy to make the motion, but I don't think it's going to pass. I think it was pretty clear that there would not be the votes. I'd be happy to do it, but it might be wasting the time of the trustees, and maybe they could just kind of informally say what they feel about what I propose, because, or is it easier just to get it out of the way?
I mean, I wouldn't. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, thanks. I will speak. Vice President Duran, my feelings relate to what Superintendent Wells said, and that's why I asked for his clarification. You know, I mean, we could vote for earlier dates, but I feel that just puts him in an impossible position. I think that Dr. Wells was trying to tell us, you know, a bunch of different times that these are the earliest dates that he feels that he can achieve. And if we put a target, you know, he said he's willing to work for it. If that's the will of the board, then it becomes his job to work for it. And he would do that because he operates in good faith with the board. But he said quite clearly that this is what he felt like is possible. And so that's my hesitation, because what I really don't want to see is, I don't want to see us give him an impossible task to negotiate, and then what would happen would be some of the really dire stories that have happened around the state. You know, like Sacramento said they were going to open and then they didn't, and Palo Alto is having a war between part of their community wanting one thing and another faction wanting another. And I think San Diego's gone pretty bad too, and LA hasn't been a happy story. So I just wanted to support our teachers and our district office, and I kind of felt like this is what they felt like they could achieve. And I didn't even hear a whole lot of confidence on the part of the teachers that they want to see a lot more details about the safety aspects, as does Trustee Hinckley, and I think all of us. But you know, that's my stand. Thank you for asking.
What I was going to say is, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but it kind of goes with what our goals should be and what our targets should be. And I think it aligns with kind of what we tell our students. We tell our students that when you get into the classroom, you start with an A, and it's your job to keep that A, which means we tell them to have like the highest goal. So we are not trying to set up our superintendent to not be successful. We want to set them up for success. The dates that we set in place are goals. If the dates are not, if we get to that date and something happens and we're unable to do it, or it's not safe, or something changes, then we should go from there. The chief medical officer for Alameda County was the one who gave us the October 13th date. That was the person who did. So if that's the person that we're following, that person said that it was safe for us to do this as of October 13th. If we are following additional guidelines to make sure that our teachers and staff are safe, I'm all for that, which is why we should bring in our own expert to help us and to help the superintendent and his staff open up by the dates that we present this evening. We should present dates that are optimistic, because those are the goals, and that's what we're trying to get to, and we're trying to get this done as quickly as possible, not as easy as possible. It might be tough. It might be more long nights. It might, our director of maintenance might be in 1 o'clock in the morning putting up plexiglass to keep the kids safe, but that's what we got to do. And if he needs a helping hand, I'll put my mask on. I'll be right there with you, because there's kids in need and we got to do it. And they need us to shoot for earlier dates. And if we don't get those dates, then at least we can say we tried. And we can look those parents in the face and we can say, we tried to help your students. Because the longer we wait, and if we get that call that one of our students committed suicide because these schools aren't open, we can't go back and fix it. It's done. So the dates, I'm not trying to set anybody up for failure. The dates, the earlier the dates are, the harder that we'll all work. And I'm not saying that anybody is in this alone. We will all try and figure this out. But it is our job and our duty to figure this out. And so that's why I'd like to see the earlier dates, and also see us bring, whatever we need to bring in order to get this done. And so that's why I'd like for Vice President Durand to submit our motion. And if there are trustees who feel as if the dates would work, if we removed or changed one thing or two things, to make like that friendly amendment, so that we can pass this and everybody can get some sleep and wake up and get started on these dates, and we can do the work that we need to do to help all the students in the district. Thank you.
Vice President Durand, your hand was up next.
Please hear from Trustee Clark first.
Yeah, thank you, VP Durand, and thank you, President Trutain. After the vote, I heard a few folks say that they were disappointed. So I guess I'll go ahead and say what I'm disappointed about. If you go back and look at the dates that I guess are still up on the screen for the hubs, for TK and first, and second through third, I moved them up 3 days. Okay, for fourth and fifth grade, it got moved up 9 days. And for 6th through 12th grade, it got moved up 6 weeks. And a lot of people were asking for the secondary, saying March 15th was too late. So we had a vote. Under our rules, you can change your mind, which is fine. But as far as us like moving forward and getting to work, I'm gonna go ahead and read a statement that I wrote down real quick after the vote was done. And I thought we were gonna move forward, but now it looks like we're stuck again. But I'm gonna go ahead and read it anyway. What I was gonna say is I wanted to thank everybody involved in these discussions. Now we need to come together as a community and support each other. Also, I'd like to request that Dr. Wells and his staff to continue to work as hard as possible to make these target dates a reality. And unfortunately, this is not where we're at. Dr. Wells, this was his proposal with the dates. We trust him to come up with what he thinks is best. And I tweaked the dates a little bit, which I thought was best. Like I said, some of those dates were on Thursdays. I just moved them to a Monday, right? And then I moved up to secondary and it passed. And then now this is where we are. Very, very frustrating, right? Having these discussions, it sounds like some people want us to get to school as soon as possible, but now it looks like it's going to be even longer before we get back to school. So very, very frustrating for me. Thank you.
Vice President Durand, do you, your hand is up. It's your turn now.
Okay. Part of what I feel is that all this planning should have happened beginning July, right? Because that's when we indicated that the superintendent would come back with a report October 6th. And that was the date he gave us. So when we came back, I expected to see a full-blown report with all the safety and health issues addressed. And then it just happened that the county, a few days prior to that, came out with their statement that we could reopen beginning October 13th. So it just seemed to line up that in fact we would be able to get some of our kids back to school much sooner than later. So those were my expectations. And one of the things I have heard from so many parents about their need to get their kids back in school for their social, emotional needs. They're traumatized. And as I've tried to stress, it's the parents making the decisions. We're not making that decision for each and every parent. It's their children, it's their child, it's their decision. We are just giving them the options. And I think that, so I kind of feel like all this stuff should have been ready already. And now, okay, let's extend it 3 more weeks. 3.5 more weeks is what I'm counting, if kids go back to school on November 2nd. And I think that's reasonable. And so that's where I am. And I can certainly make the proposal now and see how it goes. So would that be appropriate, President Trutain?
Sure. The floor is open for motions.
Okay.
Vice President Duran, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. I would like to propose that, that we revise the target dates for pivoting to hybrid instruction. The preschool through 2nd grade would return on November 2nd. 3rd graders through 5th graders would return on November 9th. A conversation with the principal in particular needs to be held regarding the 6th graders, since that is part of a recommendation, not a recommendation, but a suggestion that we could in fact, or we got permission to reopen 6th grade, and that secondary date would be commence with 2nd semester, whatever that specific date is. That's my motion.
Let me ask for a clarification. Are you, you talked about the target dates, but is this an approval of the superintendent's proposal in general with those changes to the target dates?
We could do a second vote on that part, right? So why don't we just separate it out, since there's been some issues raised around that? So I would like to just deal first with the dates as a separate proposal.
Okay, so that's very clear. So the board understands what this is simply a proposal about the target dates, not the overall plan.
Second.
Okay, there's been a second. So Ms. Shin, can you perform a vote, please?
Yes, this will start with Trustee Hinckley.
No.
Trustee Doss.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
No.
Vice President Duran.
Yes.
President Trutain, excuse me.
No. So the motion fails with 3 opposed, Trustee Hinckley, Trustee Clark, and myself, and 2 yeses, Vice President Duran and Trustee Doss. Okay. So I think that I would like to make a motion now, and I will motion that we accept the superintendent's general proposal for a pivot to hybrid learning, and the dates would be the same dates proposed by Trustee Clark. That is November 2nd for the first preschool cohort, December 30th for the second preschool cohort, January 4th for TK and first, January 11th for 2nd and 3rd grades, January 18th for 4th and 5th, and February 1st for secondary.
A quick clarification, does that include the hubs for the?
My understanding is that the hubs are the first priority of the district, and that they are working on activating the hubs as soon as possible. I'm not sure that they're, let's check in with Superintendent Wells.
Yes, we are working, and that is a priority. That is part of our equity lens, and we are having discussions early next week to see how quickly we can do that with our bargaining unit members. Remember, it's important that we do it together in order for it to be done right. And so that's what we're doing, and it's a priority. And we heard Trustee Dawson and the other trustees about it being a priority. It was crystal clear.
So I guess I can say my motion includes the understanding that opening hubs is a high priority of the district.
But does that, but is it, are the hubs on the target date of November 5th or sooner?
Dr.
Well, the hubs of the preschool is the target date that President Tutain just mentioned. But the hubs for all levels of what we're working on and making a priority and part of the phase-in process.
Okay, thank you.
Could you just be real super clear about what that means? So that means you are already working to get those hubs, that in-person support happening as soon as possible, which could be before November 5th, but November 5th, but it's on this November 5th item or whatever the revised earlier date is.
That is correct, Trustee Hinckley.
Thanks.
Do I have a second?
If I can ask you to just clarify it and please state it again so everyone knows what we're voting on. And also, if you can give me some clarification if this is any different than my proposal about 45 minutes ago.
I think that it's the same as what you proposed, but as what you and I understood that you proposed, but clearly it wasn't clear to all of the trustees at that time. So yes, you're right. I should make this crystal clear. So I am motioning that we accept the superintendent's proposal for a plan to pivot to hybrid learning. The dates would be the same as what Trustee Clark mentioned earlier. Going down this list on the slide, they would be changed to November 2nd, December 30th, January 4th, January 11th, January 18th, and then February 1st. This motion includes the statement by the superintendent that he is fast tracking hubs for our students most in need, and hopes that they can begin by November 5th or perhaps even earlier. That's my motion.
I second that, President Tutain.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Doss?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Vice President Duran?
No.
President Tutain?
Yes.
Trustee Hinckley?
No.
The motion passes with Trustee Doss, myself, and Trustee Clark in favor, Vice President Duran and Trustee Hinckley opposed. So folks, here we are again. And I want to reiterate one more time that this is a rough, this is an outline, the skeleton of a plan, and the district office has vowed to us that this is going to get fleshed out, and that we're going to have a dashboard online and communicate it out to the community about how close we are to fulfilling the checklist that the county guidelines recommends. And I also hope that we will certainly hear more planning about the return to our secondary students. And we do have a lot of work ahead of us. And I thank everybody for all of their patience and all of their engagement on this.
Can I add one last thing, President Trutain, please?
Certainly.
Yeah, this would just be a call for the whole community. As board members, a lot of times we have really tough decisions to make. And I think it's been stated many times over my 3.5 years on the board that all of the board members and the staff truly, truly care about what's best for children and our parents and for our teachers and all our support staff. I know some people are going to be not too happy with this decision, and hopefully some folks are, but at a certain point we had to make a decision to move forward. And as board members, that's what we signed up for. And I just hope that we can all come together, strength in numbers. We're going through these terrible times, and the more we stay together, the more successful the implementation of this plan is going to be. So I want to thank everybody truly from the bottom of my heart that we can move forward and try to get our kids back in school where they belong. And just want to thank everybody.
I'd also like to say something really quick. I appreciate everybody bearing with me there. I thought it was really important to go back, and I know that we ended up, voting there and things, went as they went before. But I thought it was really important to hear from Trustee Vice President Durham. And I felt as if it was kind of skipped over. And like I said, we arrived where we arrived, but I thought it was important to go back and hear what she had to say, and also to go through those motions. And so, I appreciate everybody in that additional time that we took. I said, I feel better that we did that. I think it's important that we have all those discussions, and that if it takes a little bit of extra time, that's okay, because these are decisions that affect a lot of people and they're very serious, and we should take, all the time necessary. So I appreciate, everybody's time with that, and thank you.
I agree with you, Trustee Doss. I think it is important to get it all out there and be transparent about it. I think it was worth the time. And I also think it was worth the time clarifying with the superintendent that all of us feel strongly that we need to do as much as we can to open the hubs, and that is an extremely high priority. And I think that has come through now, the way that we did things.
President Trutain, just a quick comment. I mean, because we are doing, the governance team is doing business in front of the public, and I don't want the public to think that the district office, along with our teaching staff and our labor, CSEA and SEIU, had from July till now to do stuff. We put student achievement and teaching and learning as the forefront, along with safety first. And we've been working hard to have a robust remote 2.0 learning for all of our kids. And we were really proud of the work we put in to do that, because that was a priority. And that's what we've been doing since July and up until the opening of school. And that's where all of our efforts have been. And it's been taxing and it's been grueling. And I got to tell you, my staff and I were averaging around 80 hours a week, including weekends. And so I don't want anybody to think that we were sitting on our hands or our thumbs from July to now, because we committed to this community, we committed to our kids and our staff. And I just want to be really crystal clear with that piece, because we take that to heart every day when we wake up. We come ready to serve. And I want the community to know that. And I want this board to know that. And I've just felt compelled to let the community know that that's what we do. We heard from my teachers earlier about how hard they're working. They're working twice as hard in remote learning than what they ever done. And why do they do it? Because this is their mission. And I don't want people to think we're sitting around doing nothing. That is so far from the reality. And I just feel compelled to share that.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. All of the emails that I've gotten from parents about well, not absolutely all of them, not 100%, but there's been a tremendous outpouring of thanks to our teachers and our staff for the excellence of the remote learning. I always think it's funny to call it remote learning 2.0 because that reminds me of getting a C. I think that Albany could say that it's in remote learning 4.0, it's getting an A. So, and I think with that, we should adjourn.